Welcome to our Board of Ed meeting. Please rise for, salute to the flag. Thank you. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody's out of sync on that one. That didn't work. Oh, well.
In the absence of Kathy Kalapanovich, who is our board president, I'm the acting board president tonight, and I'll be presiding over the meeting. Mr. Gorski, can we get roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Koloponowicz. Mr. Chiarella.
Here.
Ms. Antelis.
Here.
Mr. Braverman.
Here.
Mr. Kaufman.
Here.
Mr. Klein.
Here.
Mr. Leary.
Here.
Mr. Masters.
Here.
Mr. Tesler.
Here.
Mrs. Faroni.
Here.
Acting Board President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the Monroe Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having date, time, and place thereof posted July 20th, 2012. Number 1, at all schools. Number 2, at the Home News Tribune. Number 3, the Cranberry Press, and filed with the clerk of the municipality. Right now, I would like to open it up to the public for the public forum regarding anything that we have on the agenda, and agenda items only for right now. We'll have a second forum where we'll be able to discuss anything that you want to discuss. Please remember to state your name and address into the microphone. Yes, we're going to have a public forum now for items on the agenda, and then we'll have another public forum after we come out of closed session. And then items that are not, that are not restricted to the agenda can be discussed. No.
No.
At the open forum at the end, you can. Yes. Thank you. Anyone? No? Okay. Well, seeing no one, I'll move on then to approval of the minutes. Public Board of Education meeting, May 9th, 2012.
So moved.
Second.
Antelis and Luke Kaufman.
Hello. Closed session public.
First, anybody?
Oh, sorry. Any discussion? Anybody, anything? No. All opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
So noted.
All right, we'll move on. It's closed session, public meeting, May 9th, 2012.
So moved. Second.
Yes. Any-
Any commentary?
Anybody have any comments? No?
All in favor?
All in favor? Anyone opposed? Abstention? You abstain? Oh, no.
Okay.
Okay.
Number 7.
I'm going to read the closed session resolution now. We're going to juggle the agenda a little bit, and the reason for that is, and I'm promising you that we're going to be very brief in closed session, but we need to go into closed session to discuss a couple matters that were on the agenda. We also have removed one item that we will be discussing in August. Can I bring up what that is?
Yes.
That's that's regarding Jamesburg, but we will discuss that at the August meeting. But we have a couple matters that we have to discuss in closed session, so we move that up so that we could deal with that, and then we'll come back out here and open up. But I promise you, it's going to be brief. So I'm going to read that. I'm going to read that now. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of Monroe hereby moves to go into closed session in accordance with the Sunshine Law, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1075. NJSA 10:4-6 through 10:4-21 to discuss the following subjects: pending confidential investigation, parent concerns brought to the superintendent's attention earlier today, and the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public when the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
First and second.
Can I get it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? No? Okay. Thank you.
We're not missing a
All right, we're going back into session now, and I just want to apologize. I told you we would be brief. That was brief for us, believe it or not. And they just went through Robert's Rules of Order with me, so I'm going to do much better now going forward. So I'm going to move on now to the superintendent's report.
All right, on the superintendent's report, you have the enrollment data, which is which really reflects the June, the closing out of the school year information regarding student enrollment. You also have the list of our students, the programs that house our out-of-district students, and those numbers in addition to those youngsters who are on homebound instruction. Moving forward, we're going to be looking to reduce the number of students who are on homebound instruction with the use of some other sort of media that may be able to provide assistance or distance learning opportunities for our students. So we're going to be working on reviewing that. You also have the lockdown and fire drills that were conducted. I actually had to submit a statement of insurance which confirms that these two drills have in fact been conducted each month in accordance with the law. Moving on to the superintendent's personnel report, Mr. Vice President, it is recommended by the superintendent that personnel items A through BB be approved by roll call vote.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Objections?
That was Amy Antelis and Marvin Braverman, second.
I'd like to recuse myself on item BB.
Repeat the item, please.
BB.
BB,
Thank
double
you.
B.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Klein.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Mr. Masters.
Yes.
Mr. Tesler.
Yes.
Mrs. Faroni.
Yes.
Ms. Antelis.
Yes, except items BB.
So noted.
Okay.
Mr. Braverman.
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella.
Yes.
I think it's important that we note that the high school enrollment is 1,759 students. This building is designed for 1,800 students. We need to start planning.
Thank you, Mr. Leary.
Acting Board President, motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Vice President, moving on to the board action, it is recommended by the superintendent that board action items A through M be approved by roll call vote and noting the following changes to letter J. It is recommended that additional physical education sections be created for the middle school during the 2012-2013 school year to accommodate additional time needed for the middle school avid students. This period will run before or after school and will successfully meet the 150-minute weekly requirements for physical education and health instruction. The new language simply changes additional and replaces it with zero period, and either before and after school is replaces 40 minutes. I'd also like to, well, I'll let you consider that.
Motion.
Second.
Mr. Braverman and Mrs. Antelis.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Klein.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Mr. Masters.
Yes.
Mr. Tesler.
Yes.
Mrs. Faroni.
Yes.
Ms. Antelis.
Yes.
Mr. Braverman.
Yes.
Chiarella.
Yes.
Acting Board President, motion, board action items A through M passes.
And before I conclude my report, just one other item should be listed on the agenda is item N, like Nancy, and I'd like to read this in for your approval. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the appointment of Michael Gorski as the interim district affirmative action officer, effective retroactively from July 1 through July 1, 2012 to June 30th, 2013, in compliance with state requirements. Currently, we do not have an affirmative action officer, and we need to have one in place to comply with state statutes. Once I meet with the Personnel Committee and we restructure the administrative assistant to the superintendent position, then those duties will be transferred back.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Klein.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Faroni?
Yes.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Chiarella?
Yes,
Acting Board President, motion and passes.
thank you. We'll move on now to number 8, Business Administrators Report.
Acting Board President and members of the Monroe Township Board of Education, it is recommended that board action items A through P be approved by consent roll call. P was handed out additionally as we had a bid opening for financing just yesterday.
So moved.
Second.
Who's first? Who's
Mr.
first?
Klein?
Mr. Klein?
Oh,
Kaufman?
Lou.
So noted.
So Mr. Kaufman, sorry.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
I just have a question. Those school lunches, what's the increase on that?
The school lunch price increases are 10 cents, and the reason for the lunch increase is that there are new sweeping federal changes to the school lunch program, actually mandating that the minimum rate charged for students be in line with the reimbursement rate for free meals. This will put us on track to get close to that reimbursement rate by the time this goes into effect. And also, the new federal guidelines require that we extensively increase the amount of fruits and vegetables that not only that we provide to students in the cafeteria, but they're required to take with each meal. So the cost of these additional fruits and vegetables, as well as the new compliance with the federal guidelines, required us to raise it by 10 cents, which was as conservative as we could be.
And yes.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Ms. Faroni?
Yes.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Chiarella?
Yes,
Acting Board President, motion passes.
thank you. Now I'm going to move on to the Board President's report. Since she's not here, I'm going to give an acting Board President's report. I'd like to add an additional item based upon our last closed session prior to the last meeting where we discussed this. But anyway, it is recommended that the members of the Monroe Township Board of Education approve and authorize an annual salary for Dr. Kenneth R. Hamilton, Superintendent of Schools, for the 2012-2013 school year of $194,891, retroactive to July 1st, 2012, as recommended by the board in its closed session meeting on June 20th, 2012. This contract was reviewed and approved by the county superintendent of schools. Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Scary.
Mr. Kaufman?
Abstain.
So noted. Mr. Klein?
Abstain.
Noted. Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Ms. Faroni?
Yes.
Ms. Antelis?
I recuse myself.
So noted. Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Acting Board President, motion passes.
Okay. Now we'll move on to number 10, committee reports. Mr. Kaufman?
Sure. There was a curriculum committee meeting held this evening, and we covered a few points. Just to give Ira, your personnel, right? We discussed a couple of new positions that are going to be coming your way, basic skills lead teacher and the tag lead teacher. Went over their responsibilities and what they're going to be looking to try and do throughout the district, so they'll be coming your way. We discussed some new iBooks that will be coming to the high school next year as part of the iPad initiative. We're going to be looking for a few algebra books, a geometry book, and I think I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to go into a little bit more detail on some of the initiatives we have related to iPads.
No, I'm sorry. Dr. Corman?
Okay, just 4 different pieces. Number one, next year we will be implementing iBooks in the area of mathematics in Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Dynamics of Geometry, Geometry and Honors Geometry. In addition, we are now entering a partnership between Pearson and Monroe to do some quantitative research, some actual research. I'm meeting with them on August 20th to see if there's an effect of students using digital textbooks versus non-digital textbooks. So I will be happy to report out those findings of the meeting that I have on the 20th, probably at the 22nd board meeting. In addition, the State of New Jersey Department of Education Director, Office of Educational Technology, sent me an email today to ask us to be part of a national database of state ed tech information as it pertains to digital content. So we are going to fill out that survey. And then lastly, through an analysis this past year, we saved over $13,000 in copies that were made in the high school from last year to this year with the onset of the iPads. So that's just a brief update of some highlights that have come through my office in the last couple of weeks. In addition, Mr. Kaufman, we approved language arts literacy curriculum and math curriculum documents that have been written throughout the summer so far.
Thanks, Jeff. That concludes the report.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, he's done. Yes, we had a buildings, grounds, transportation. It's quite lengthy, so I'm going to kind of bullet it. It was over at the Applegarth School trailer 2 days ago. We saw the school. We took a nice tour. It's really coming along. The classrooms that were completed look really nice. We had an MECA update. The painting started. The playground's underway. Moved special services over to the Applegarth trailers for now. The Brookside roof, the contract's been awarded and the work has been started over there. The Monroe Township High School construction extras, they're noted in, I think, the business administrator's report. Everything's pretty much closed out with that. There was 2 additional charges, roughly $47,000 for electrical, the journalism classroom, IT, the Apple TV stuff. There was another one, security, about $40,000 for that. We got 2 credits though back. We got a masonry credit and a signage credit of about $47,000 and an HVAC credit of about $21,000. And we worked out a deal to barter some of the costs for the journalism modification. The journalism classroom is pretty much complete. The autism room is not ready for the start of school yet, but we're going to continue to work on that. The IPM plan review came back very positive. We're not using any pesticides anymore. We're trying a lot of natural. We did use pesticides once for a termite infestation, but that's pretty much it. We also discussed transportation. Our efficiency rating is back on top, right, Mike? That's what it was? Yeah. We talked about the Applegarth busing and what the plan is for that, and we also discussed courtesy busing. We looked at a couple of ideas of reinstating one run or possibly having an after-school care for the kids that are here without the run. So that's it.
Thank you. Well, as part of that committee report, one of the things that the committee wanted to do was to have a discussion with the full board regarding the course we should take regarding the after-school program. There were a couple things on the table. One was to create a safety program where the children in the schools would be supervised by staff members and that there would be a safe place for them to wait in order to be picked up. There were also some other things that were asked and some other ideas that were thrown around, and finally we decided to open it up to discussion for the full board because it's a very important topic. And I'd like to do that now, and then I'd like to just say my piece. But Mr. Tesler?
Thank you, Ken. Back in the meeting when we first discussed this back in January, I had an opinion at the meeting, and my opinion hasn't changed, but I would like to see at least the first run after school reinstated from the middle school and the high school, if possible. That's my first preference. My second preference is we need some place for the kids to be safe while they're waiting for the parents to get picked up if the reinstituting the first run isn't possible or if there's not enough support for it. So we need some place safe where the kids can go and be watched and supervised, so some sort of after-school safe harbor or program. That would be second on my list. So that's just my opinion.
Anyone else? Ms. Santalis?
Back when this board started discussing the budget as a whole, This item was removed from the budget. And I remember the discussion, and we said that this was going to happen, and we went along with it anyway because we knew the county, the state was telling us we were over adequate. We looked at various items. What's going to happen is if we reinstate this, we are going to get penalized, and soon we're going to get no state funding. And while I am sympathetic to the parents, I understand this. There are many people in this town, not just the parents of children. And when we have to make a decision, the busing makes the most sense. Otherwise, it's going to be the programs. We are penalized over and over for being over adequate. For those of you who don't know, over adequate is everything we give our children outside of the school day. I don't think it's fair. I've had correspondence with a member of the community. We should be encouraged to be giving our children a well-rounded education, but instead we get 5% funding on a $100 million budget, and people in this town just can't afford these taxes anymore. And we are going to have to start looking at a way to reel this stuff in, because the state's going to penalize us. I don't want children to be unsafe. I've talked to the board about the safe haven. I think that that's honestly not the greatest idea, but the only idea, because if we continue on this route of spending, we're going to lose every dime of our funding, and it's not fair to the taxpayers of Monroe.
Mr. Klein? Thank you, Ms. Santos.
As I've been saying for the 3 years that I'm on the board, at least 2.5 of those years was to get the parents active in attempting to get our fair share from the state. So I'm going to ask a question. I'd love to see the turnout we have here. Probably have 200 people plus kids. I wish this is what the turnout was every month, but it seems that parents only come out when it affects them. Otherwise, we have 10 people, 15 people. So I'm going to ask a question that I asked before. This decision on zero-period busing and after-school busing was made roughly 4 months ago. Roughly 4 months ago. By a show of hands, how many of you attempted to send a letter to the State Department of Education or the governor complaining that we were forced to cut zero-period busing because we're over adequacy? Show of hands. I don't see anybody. I see one. Everybody who's been here, young ma'am.
Okay, we have
Ma'am,
to,
no, I'm not looking to get into
Mr.
an
Klein.
argument, but this has been said at the meetings. No, you'll be able, when we get to the open section. But I have complained about this in the newspapers at every meeting prior to this, just on funding it, and where Amy misspoke, is she said we get 5%, okay? Try less than 3%. We're getting $300 a student for 5,900 students. You do the mathematics on a $103 million budget. Old Bridge has 94 and 9,500 students. They're rated the same way as we are, an FG district, and they're getting $5,000 a year per student. Now, to me it seems, and I've said it at every meeting, and I've been chastised about it by people on the board that I bring up the same thing. I don't know what it takes to get the...
Mr. Tessler, do you want to?
I'm sorry, it just wouldn't shut up. I apologize for that.
I take offense to that, by the way.
Sorry, it was an accident.
Anyway,
I have no idea.
I don't know what it takes to have the parents get involved and go to the state and say enough is enough. I have been in contact with the state Supreme Court. I've been in contact with the governor, both by mail and in person. I've been in touch with the New Jersey Department of Education. I'm one person. Where's all of you? I came here tonight to vote to reinstate zero-period busing. But after seeing that nobody did anything in attempt to help us from the state, I cannot vote for it. And I'll have to stand with what we did before and vote against it. I don't want to do it, but none of you, you're the first ones to come here to complain. Complain to the state. They're forcing us to do it. I'm not going to keep paying. The residents, the retired residents are not going to keep paying. Something has to be done. If you're happy the way we are financed by the state, and you're not willing to step up, other than Chrissy, to write letters, then there's nothing I can do to help you. And you know I'd be the first one in the world to help us, to help you as parents and the kids. But if you're not willing to help yourself, we can't do it. You'll have plenty of time to bring it up when it's the public section.
Thank you, Mr. Klein.
When's the last time you came to a meeting?
Okay, let me just, I just have to call everybody to order. I promise you, everyone will be heard. And you'll all have a chance to answer. Are there any other board members that would like to say anything? No?
What do we have to provide legally for the kids?
You mean in terms of transportation?
Not even transportation. We're going to have the kids stay late. We have to have a place for them to be. What is that? What is that? Because we discussed it a little bit at the buildings and grounds. But
Mike prepared a proposal, and I'll let him, because I know
Okay.
he did the research on that, so I'll let Mike respond to that.
Mr. Masters, would you repeat your question? I want to make sure I heard it.
So if we have after-school activities, legally, what are we mandated to provide for the children in terms of transportation and/or some sort of safe area for them to stay?
Okay. The question was, what is the district required to provide as far as supervision or transportation for students who participate in after-school activities? According to our board attorney, there is a minimal duty of care that the district has, a legal responsibility for, supported by case law, to make sure that students in general are safeguarded after the events conclude. The district is not in any way required to provide transportation services, just to have a general safe plan for students, to have a plan to arrive home safely. In other words, according to our attorney, and she elaborated on this, you can't just close the door after the event and that's the end of it. You have to make some minimal effort to provide a duty of care. Whether that is a notification to parents in time that this will be discontinued so that they can make other arrangements, that would suffice according to our board attorney. Whether you provide a supervision area for students to wait until they're picked up, that could be another area for the board to decide.
Ken? Just one follow-up. Now, what we're talking about now, is that just zero-period busing or after-school busing also?
You mean the safe haven,
Well, for what all these parents are here for? They're for zero-period? For both,
both?
okay.
With the exception of those programs that are required.
Right,
tag
that we
and basic
understand.
skills.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Our savings would be somewhere around $400,000?
$450,000 was cut from the budget for the removal of zero-period transportation. That was $250,000. The 430 run was $100,000 because that was much more expansive and covered the middle school and the high school. And it was $50,000 each between the 515 and the 615 runs, for a total of $450,000 that was removed from the budget.
Okay. So if we're talking $450,000, my next question would be, what can we do to pull money from something else to pay the $450 without adding $450 into the budget? So it could be more children per class. What else can we do to save money? Drop courses? I mean, it's very easy to spend $450, but you want it reinstated. Why can't we find places we can cut $450,000? And even if it means increasing the student population in the classes, to make up for the $450, and then we can reinstate all that.
Ken, if you like, if you want me to. Mr. Kaufman?
I just have a couple of questions. I also voted, like everybody else, not to have the zero-period busing and take the money out of the budget. But one of the things that I don't know if it was ever addressed or we never actually got the information is, this is one of the items that puts us over adequacy. There are other items that put us over adequacy. And let's say, I don't know, it's one of 10, 15, 20 items. I don't know, you guys would know how many there are other things that make us over adequacy. I believe the original catalyst why we tried to look at impacting this particular item was because we were looking at lowering that exposure of being over adequate to be able to get more money from the state. One thing we do not know, or I haven't been told, is if we take out the courtesy busing for a savings of $400 and something thousand, I'm assuming that we're going to get more than $400,000 in state money coming in. Because otherwise, it'd be a wash, and it would be ridiculous to cut it. My question really is, does anybody know, or can anybody tell me how much money we're going to get? Because if we're going to get $1.50, which is what I would see coming from the state, right, for taking $400,000 off of our budget to remove courtesy busing, the math doesn't work.
No, there's no way we can begin to project. There's no way we can begin to project what state aid will be, one. But the other piece to this is that the school funding formula, which has been underfunded, by the way, does not even lend itself to that kind of balance that you just described. That would be ideal. Our efforts to reduce our over-adequacy spending was to make us more favorable to the state as we tried to get more state aid, and we continued that quest. It's a very difficult argument to, at least from the finance people at the State Department, to argue more state aid when we continue to be over adequacy in some of our other areas. So this was one of several steps that we would need to take long-term in order to make us either, one, viable for an appropriate lawsuit, if that turned out to be a good option, and based on a meeting yesterday, that may not be the best option for us, but we can talk about that at another time. And two, to put us in better alignment with districts with like spending, where we may be able to create a class of school districts who are in similar districts, similar circumstances, and making us more eligible for that fight. But no, there's no indication whatsoever that this reduction of our $450,000 being over adequate is going to manifest itself in an additional increase in aid by $400, let alone $450.
One follow-up to that, if I may. Roughly 3 months ago, I made a motion to look into filing a lawsuit against the State Department of Education for our fair share in funding. Where do we stand with that?
We met yesterday. We met with Save Our Schools, board counsel, and an attorney who specializes in school funding. There's a recommendation that I'll actually be sharing with the board in writing tomorrow, but in essence, what we were advised is there are other avenues. The best avenue for us at this point is to lobby with our legislators to get the districts to fund the state to fund the school funding formula. In fact, if the state fully funded the school funding formula, we would get about $5 million in state aid. So they believe that the expert opinion of these attorneys was that we would be most likely to be successful in an endeavor with our community to put pressure on our legislators, to put pressure on the powers that be to fully fund the school formula. Not to change it, because that would put us at a disadvantage, but to fully fund the current formula. There is a proposal to change the current funding formula, but the argument in that case is there's no evidence that the current formula doesn't work because it hasn't been funded.
We're not even getting close to what we should be getting.
Nowhere near.
And the letter I got back from the head attorney from the state Supreme Court was the fact that we would have to file a lawsuit in the Superior Court before they can even hear it. Because what I asked for was a hearing for you and Mike and whoever else from the board would be involved, John Leary, to meet with them and plead our case, and that was the answer I got.
Right.
And that's why I was emphatic about at least attempting to file a lawsuit. What I have found, speaking to Chris Christie personally, and letters, is that they don't give a damn about us. I'll be very honest with you. This garbage about having to cut because we're over adequacy, they don't care about us for 1 second. And that includes Christie. And we know him through the family, so I think the letters I write to him, and he gets them, are a joke. He thinks it's a joke. In the meantime, he's now cut a deal with George Norcross. That's why Sweeney backs him. So all that money's going to Camden because of Norcross, and we're here begging, these parents are here begging for zero-period busing, and I'd love to approve it. Where's the money going to come from? I'm not trying to be a hard-nosed. I don't want these kids having to stand around in school for an extra few hours or have you having to drop them off. But what else are you supposed to do? And then there's no backing here. Why don't you get angry and write and complain? So it's not one letter from me or one letter from Dr. Hamilton. Nobody wants to complain except when we have to make the cut. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Mr. Klein. We're going to, excuse me. So you'll be able to speak in a moment, please. We have to keep order. I'm going to recognize Mr. Gorski now. He'd like to say a couple things.
Thank you. I feel it's imperative, and I don't want it to get lost in this conversation. The reasons why, another reason in addition to what Mr. Kaufman raised about the adequacy relationship to state aid funding, and as Dr. Hamilton elaborated, is not determined and cannot be calculated in a formula. And to Ms. Antelis's point before, this cut specifically with late-run busing was pressured upon the district by the county office, Department of Education, for the last few years, and I mean 4 to 5 years. There, according to Mr. John Nemeth, Executive County Business Administrator, there is great liability for school districts because there is no accountability for the students on the bus, and this is something that I've personally felt over the years. I don't know the roster that's getting on the bus. None is taken. God forbid something happens with a bus. I can't tell you who was on there, who got off, and when. And there is a duty to care that the district has in relation to transportation services to ensure the safeguarding of students, and according to Mr. Nemeth, we are not complying with that by offering late-run courtesy busing. Dr. Hamilton and I participate every January in a budget efficiency review at the county office. Every year we discuss late-run courtesy busing and why we haven't eliminated it yet. In the 12-13 budget, there was a specific checklist point. Does your district still offer late-run courtesy busing? Yes or no? This year we checked no, and we had a rather pleasant meeting. And let me tell you, it's extremely thorough. We bring about 6 inches worth of paper to this meeting, and it's a very strenuous process. So I don't want that to get overlooked, that if there is a reinstatement of any zero-period transportation busing, that this could have a negative effect on future budgets, because ultimately our budget each year has always been and will always be approved by the county office. If we do not get a signature from Dr. Samuel Stewart, Executive County Superintendent of Schools for the county, and John Nemeth, Executive County Business Administrator, we can't put out the budget.
Mr. Tisler? No, Mr. Antelis?
Where would we get $450,000 to bring this back?
That's a very open-ended question. Where would we get the $450,000 to bring this back? I will say from a business perspective, this has been one of the most strenuous years on the budget that the district has ever had. We took a $180,000 revenue source as the pay to participate and reversed that out of the budget. That had an effect of finding $180,000 by making budget adjustments for important programs that were in there and reviewing other cost savings to find a spot for that. We are reopening Applegarth School this September. We have gone to the 10th degree to ensure every degree of safety, cleanliness, illumination, and invitation to the community has been not overlooked in the opening of that school. That has had a dramatic effect on the budget, because I can tell you a lot of that was not planned or budgeted for. The lease purchase that you've seen as handed out tonight reflects that, with playground equipment and some other items to make sure that that school is on parity with other school facilities. So where would another $450,000 come from? It would take a great review of the budget, perhaps some sacrifices in other areas, in order to determine that.
So what you're saying is there's not $450,000 available for us to bring this back?
No, ma'am. And if we continue to decrease our excess surplus calculation, which carries over to the next budget year, that has a constricting effect on future budgets. So items that are currently in the budget would not be allowable with a shrunken budget size, because you don't have this fund balance rolling over to the subsequent years.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yeah, one last point. Just for the purpose of transparency, when the issue came up back, I think it was March, April timeframe, parents did express some concerns, and we talked about thinking of a couple of different ideas about trying to maybe create some type of self-funded mechanism where people that would want to or could afford to pay for the transportation create some kind of framework or mechanism by which we can fund ourselves both busing and other potential things which we could cut in the future relative to this adequacy issue. And Mike did a lot of extensive research and went to other districts to compare and talk to the county superintendents to see what kind of options we had there. I know a lot of people here may not have heard or seen that on TV. So Mike, do you want to just touch on some of that, because it's important to let everybody know that, you know, we didn't cut it and then just kind of walk away. We're trying to think of other things that can be done to try and retrofit and self-fund it, so that while the state may think or the county may think we don't need it, that doesn't mean the township people here don't feel it's worthy of having. So
the district considered some options that were proposed at the budget cycle for a pay-to-ride, for lack of a better term, system where the district would charge residents for a ride on the late-run buses. And there was a couple offsets to that that made it seem less attractive. Number one was the failure of the pay-to-participate budget revenue source to be received in the community. We had very strong resentment of that program and had to refund everybody's money plus the credit card processing charges to the tune of about $10,000. The county office was involved in the discussion about the pay-to-ride program, and it was strongly discouraged for the following reasons. Number one, the district still has that liability issue that I mentioned previously. You don't know who's on the bus, and you have no accountability. Unlike you do with a regular route where you have a roster, and every seat corresponds to a kid. Number two, you still have to have the same amount of buses, the same amount of insurance for the buses, the same amount of drivers, the same amount of state pensions for the drivers. And according to the county office, it was discouraged because it does not shrink the appropriations that the school district is facing enough in order to merit that. And with the insurance and the liability issues, it was strongly discouraged. According to Mr. Nemeth, most of the districts in the county, and I had some statistical numbers on this before, have eliminated courtesy busing. Some still have it, but they will be pressured to get rid of it, according to Mr. Nemeth. And I had another point, but it slipped my mind.
If I may, I'd like to just say, give my thoughts. And I too was part of the decision-making process back a few months ago. And then recently, Mr. Gorski, Dr. Hamilton contacted our legal team and asked them if we were bound by any safety concerns or what our legal responsibilities were. And then they came back and said we did have some legal responsibilities to safeguard the children. So that kind of changed my way of thinking. So we started to look at some projections, and by the district's own projections, and some of the projections that we were given at the Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation Committee meeting, is that we could see the amount of kids that would be in that after-school safety zone, for lack of a better term, grow to 300 to 400 children just in the middle school alone. So that's a huge amount of children. And so as we were looking at that and discussing that, I thought that maybe a better plan would be to institute or reinstitute a 430 run for the schools, which would pretty much eliminate the need for the program at the middle school, because those children would all be, those 300 to 400 children would be gone. That wouldn't exist anymore. And then it would alleviate some of the congestion at the high school with regards to that. And then we could have the safety program for the remaining kids. And it was that legal concern and that legal obligation that changed my mind and made me think that maybe there was a hybrid program where that one run would cost us about $100,000, plus the implementation of the safety program at the high school would be anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 for that one program.
Yes, to extend a supervision area for students at the high school from 4:15 until 6:15 would be approximately $15,000 annually.
Okay, so $115,000, which would still give us a sizable savings to help us reduce our adequacy. And then we'd be able to see what the state comes up with and what they give us. And if, to Mr. Kaufman's point, if they don't come back with anything, then we'll know that it was a futile gesture, and then we could figure out what to do from there. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, just to,
Mr. Masters.
not to kick that horse, I guess the legal thing is the sticky wicket in this. I'm trying to use that in a board meeting since I was on the board. And we're getting rid of 0 period and the 6:15 run, and what you're proposing is to put in just the 4:15 or 4:30 run?
4:30.
And only have the safe haven, that's a bad name for it.
At the high school for those youngsters afterwards. And what Mr. Chiarelli is proposing would mean that those youngsters, it would take a large number of the kids from the high school, and they would be on a bus. But those youngsters whose programs or activities extend till 6:15, or sometime between that 4:30 and 6:15, those would be the youngsters who would be in this
Cafeteria or something.
cafeteria,
Supervised,
exactly,
though.
in the supervised arena, correct.
I'd love to hear from the public. Could we move this discussion till after the public?
I still have a question. There seems to be some perception out there that we've cut this busing because we bought the iPads. So, Mr. Gorski, can you explain about where the money for the iPads came from and why we spent it on them and how we couldn't spend it anywhere else?
Yes. Last year, the district purchased 2,000 iPads from a plan that was developed with the Monroe Township High School construction. Initially, 10 years ago, when the plan was developed, iPads didn't exist, of course, and it called for some kind of mobile computer device like a laptop computer. Those specs were put in the plan as best they could be projected at that time. Dr. Gorman could better speak as to why the iPad initiative was chosen and how that could better benefit students in this platform. But I will say that the monies to pay for the iPad 2s was paid for by bond referendum money, which had been budgeted initially for the purpose of providing technology in this environment.
And could we have used that money for busing?
You could not have used the high school bond referendum money for busing, no. That would have been prohibited.
Thank you.
Question for,
Mr. Kaufman.
yeah, Dr. Hamilton. Before we go ahead and decide whether or not we're going to bring back 4:30 or 6:15, do we know, based on the activities of the students, whether or not, because it could be sporting where the students are out of district, and if a bulk of the students are coming back from athletic events at 6 o'clock or 6:30 or 5:30 after the 4:15, I need to know where are we going to get the biggest bang for our buck with getting students home? Is it at 4:30 or is it later? When will the masses?
4:30.
Okay, okay.
430 would be your biggest bang for your bucks, because what that would mean, first of all, we'd eliminate all the issues at the middle school, because all the programs are over by then. The youngsters who right now, and Rob Goodall and I had this conversation along with Kevin Higgins, the vice principal. Those youngsters who are in those sporting events at the high school who get back at 6:15, 6:30, those are generally the youngsters who either have rides, whose parents pick them up, or they miss that bus anyway, and they have to make alternative options for pickup.
Mr. Tesler?
Yeah, to that point, I took a quick survey of my two older kids, and spoke to my daughter Rebecca Day, who's a cheerleader in the high school, and she does concur that the biggest bang for the buck would be that 4:30 run in the high school. They said most kids leave on the 4:30 bus, either from some sporting event, some after-school activity, or if they stay at school for after-school help. Not all of them, but most of them would leave on that route. And she said also she couldn't really give me any info on the 5:15, but she said her feeling was, and she saw there's hardly anybody on that 6:15 bus.
Mr. Masters?
Just for full clarification, what's the impact with the elementary schools now with the busing over there?
Jeff, you want to respond to that?
In what regard?
How is this going to affect that busing? It won't-
Doesn't, it's just the 0 period, which was banned in chorus.
And that's it, which would be removed.
I don't know of any after-school events in the elementary schools besides tag and basic skills.
And those are included?
Those are already
Okay.
in good shape.
Ms. Antelis?
We reinstated, how will it be funded?
As you know, the budget consists of revenues and appropriations, and unlike some of the federal and state agencies that run into difficulty with this, ours has to be in balance every year. So if we are going to now add an appropriation, it's going to have to either come from an appropriation that's currently there and has passed budget efficiency reviews by the county and also administration and the principals to be removed, and it will take some analysis. But it's a zero-sum budget. If something's going to be added, something has to be taken out. There is no pot of extra money where this could be provided.
Mr. Kaufman?
Basque. That's your revenue source. We didn't calculate it when we did the budget. We did it after we did the stuff. The Basque money is there. It will fund it.
That's a good point. Is that possible? Because I'm going to have trouble voting for something if we don't know where it's funded from, like Amy was saying. And I like this idea, but if that's possible, that's a good solution.
But wasn't that money already appropriated into the budget and considered during the budget process?
Basque was not budgeted into the budget process. That came to fruition afterwards.
Right.
However, and that's a very good point. However, you know, when you look at everything in its aggregate that has occurred this year and all the new pressures that we had on the budget, the Basque contribution is really, it's been consumed already.
So it's possible that there might have to be cuts in other areas in order to bring this back.
Yes.
Anyone else? Mr. Tesler?
Is it possible that we can recognize the revenue or money to fund the program from cost savings on a place instead of cutting any programs?
That's an excellent opportunity, and I love to talk about cost savings. The district has engaged in a collaborative purchasing arrangement where we had over $300,000 of savings by collaboratively purchasing supplies through the county. That money will help to go to offset the pay-to-participate loss of revenue. Also, this past meeting, we recommended to the Finance Committee that we change insurance carriers for our property and casualty insurance to a collaborative insurance agency run by the state. That's going to save $30,000. Every avenue for saving money that I could foresee or that we work collaboratively at our roundtable meetings between other business administrators has been looked at and wrung out as best we can.
Anyone else?
So I guess it would be possible. I know so that's $30,000 from the insurance carrier, that is, is revenue that we're not going to be spending in the budget.
That's
So
a fair,
if there's-
that's a fair point.
Right.
That $35,000 from the insurance savings is unaccounted for at this time.
Right,
that's
so
new.
that could go to offset the $100,000, whatever, and there may be other opportunities to do that as well.
I'd like to present a motion. I'm going to make a motion. And I'd like to present a motion to reinstate the 4:30 run and implement a safe supervised area at the Monroe Township High School for the students who are still in activities or programs until they're picked up.
Subject to budget. Changes to the budget.
And so, yeah, subject to budget review and changes to the budget. That's a good idea.
I guess, I just would like to also hear from the public first, before we vote on anything.
What's the legal?
I don't know what we have to do to-
Postpone the motion till
yeah.
after the public forum?
I don't know what the actual,
Okay, you can take
Okay.
the motion until after public forum.
Then we will postpone it till after the public forum. Anyone, any other committee reports? That was a long one, Lou. None? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 11, other Board of Education business. Did you raise your hand? Nope. Oh, I thought you raised, I'm sorry. Then, if we don't have any other Board of Education business, I'm going to open it up to the public. Please just state your name and address.
Anthony Prezioso, 8 Equestrian Way. Page 23F, the contract with Global Spectrum. What is that costing us?
Is that on the business administrator's report or superintendent's report?
It's on the agenda.
Fine. Item F is the authority by the board for me to enter into contract negotiations with Global Spectrum for a contract for next year's high school graduation services. This year, the fee for the use of the facility was, I believe it was about $8,000 to $10,000. I'm going by memory.
Okay, how many are graduating this coming year? How many students will graduate? Can't we hold that graduation in the beautiful?
480 to 475.
We have a
475
facility
to
here, we
480.
could use that. That's 10,000 we could save right there. I mean, what's the purpose of going someplace else when we have the facility here?
The part of, we've actually entertained this. Part of the issue that we have with that is, from the high school administrator's position, is that the auditorium, if we allow the ceremony to take place in the auditorium, the students would consume essentially 500 seats. That would essentially mean that they would only get one, at best, 2 invitations. If we have it in the gymnasium, there is some concern about access to the seats that are higher up on the bleachers, and whether or not that would be safe, particularly for grandparents and elderly people who would be attending. We are not able to use chairs on the field because of the turf that has been laid there. So we're really kind of limited.
Okay, and the bid award, how much do we sell the iPads for?
Item I was,
Per iPad.
item I is for the new iPad units, and the Board of Education authorized the district to sell the 2,000 iPad 2 units, and we're required by law to put those out to public bid. And the bid was designed that they all had to be purchased at once, so that we're not left with pieces if they didn't sell. We received a high bid in this case of $410,020, plus the bidder is going to, had come already and picked up and taken away the units.
So that comes to about $205 a unit. How much did we pay for them?
I believe it was $538 a unit.
So we took a big loss there in 6 months, didn't we? Are we going to buy new iPads? I know we got the money from the bond, and even though we lost that money, we're still going to have to buy new iPads. That's the reasoning here, right? So where's that money coming from?
There is a new lease purchase that has been engaged in, again pursuant to action by the board, which is going to take this $410,000 that we received from the sale of the iPad 2s upon bid, plus monies that we have recouped from an iCare warranty through Apple that we didn't fully utilize for the term, and apply it against the principal on the 3-year lease. So the first year of the lease, we're going to have no debt service, and the remaining amount would be split between year 2 and year 3. Those monies are to be budgeted for in the general fund.
That's got close to $1 million, isn't it? If these original iPads cost us close to $2 million.
With the inclusion of the monies coming off of the warranty, it's about $425,000 a year that will be budgeted for in the general fund.
We could really use the money right now, and maybe to put this iPad thing off and reinstating some of the programs that you're looking to cut would be a good idea. Thank you.
Mr. Leary?
It should bring to the attention of many people, approximately 5 years ago, we had a graduation ceremony on the football field, and a cloud sat right on top of our head, and we probably got 3 inches of rain in less than an hour, and everybody there looked like a bunch of drowned rats. Thank God we're going to Trenton.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Sir, any?
Robert Roach, 18 Muirfield Boulevard. On page 24 of the Business Administrator's Report, item J, with the agreement with Rutgers University, University of Medicine and Dentistry. My question is that costing Monroe anything?
Dr. Gorman, do you care to discuss that?
It's basically student teaching for OT and PT. So we have extended a partnership with the university, so there are no funds being extended by us.
Okay, thank you. One final thing is in the Sentinel, I know you mentioned earlier that you're going to talk about Jamesburg next month, but there's an article in the Sentinel where the business administrator from Jamesburg had indicated that, obviously Jamesburg does not want to pay towards the debt service, which is substantial money, and that they're working out a deal. So we're going to work toward making that a good option for them being Monroe. Can you tell me what that means?
Mr. Gorski?
Yes. I just want to begin this statement by saying that Jamesburg has always paid the tuition that they've owed us in accordance with the terms of the payment according to the A41, A42 calculation. And the stress that came up as the budget law of 2010. The 2% tax levy increase to Jamesburg's budget could not afford them to put the full amount of tuition that they owed Monroe in the budget. And a legal agreement was drafted between the districts where that interest component, once the students took enrollment in the school in September, would come due in the 13-14 budget year. The way that's calculated is we take the total interest on the debt service for this high school, and we share it proportionally based upon the enrollment. Jamesburg, if they're 20%, would get 20% of the total interest charge passed to them. This is the way the agreement has always worked when they attended the middle school. Again, the first payment of interest comes due in the budget cycle for 13-14, which is our next budget. It's foreseeable that Jamesburg is going to have a major cap problem putting that money in there. And I had lunch with the new business administrator, and we discussed this, and we have a scheduled meeting with the county office to further go through some options. But the Jamesburg business administrator did state that Jamesburg would be reaching out to Monroe for a waiver of the interest or an agreement where some of the interest is waived, because the law states that the interest charge may be charged by the receiving district. It's not required to be charged, It always has been. And that's the approach that Jamesburg has put forth, is that due to the budget cap, that they're having great difficulty fitting $600,000 in a budget their size, and would Monroe be willing to waive the charge? That's on the August meeting to discuss for the full board.
Yes.
So, in other words, Jamesburg wants Monroe taxpayers to pick up their share of the interest payments.
That's a fair statement.
Thank you. I hope the board does not go along with that.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Catherine Crowley. There was another piece of information somebody wanted. My name and what else?
Oh, your address, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, 56 Spruce Meadows Drive.
Thank you.
I have a question. I understand that this issue with the over-adequacy, it doesn't affect just the parents sitting here. It affects the retirees and other people that live in this community. Has this information ever been communicated to them, for them to also write to the state? Because it does affect their tax dollars at work, too.
Can I answer that?
Sure. Mr. Klein?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
I've had letters printed in the home news.
Good, take it, Mike.
Okay, Michelle. Is she here? I've sent letters and had them printed in the Home News Tribune and the Sentinel about the funding problem, about suggestions as to what the residents can do. In my community at Regency, I speak about it all the time. Did I go into other developments? No. Really, what you needed is you need the people who are involved. And the people who are involved are the parents. I'm not trying to put the blame on anybody. People know me enough that I call it like it is. I don't want to do anything to hurt the residents or to hurt the students. And I've said every meeting, they would break my chops about it afterwards. Whoever came, if I saw 2 new people that came to a meeting, I'd go through the whole story again. That the only way we can get any movement, now, they've gotten in touch with Linda Greenstein, who I know very well. But you have a Democrat with a Republican governor, so she's not going to get the movement that she would. And that's wrong. Yet, when it helped Christie, then he went to bed with George Norcross.
All right, well,
So,
to be honest, I don't think a community of people of our size can tackle the Democrat and Republican issues.
no, it's not
However-
even that. It's just
however-
notifying them. It's complaining that you're getting
Understood.
You're getting screwed. That's
But
what it comes out to.
I'm sorry, your name is again?
Luke Hoffman.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kaufman wanted to know what other issues were that caused us to be over inadequate. The only thing I heard was this busing. I haven't heard any other issues.
There are-
So,
I want to respond to your first question. We did have a budget steering committee that is, and I couldn't give you the list, but it's designed to be representative of, a representative from each of our adult communities. So that's one facet of it. In terms of those items that cause us to be over adequate, there are many. Anything that is not required for thorough and efficient. So for example, AP level courses, honors level courses, they're not required. The courtesy busing, the after-school programs, sports programs, those are not things that are required by law for us to have, for example. So all of those things are a part of the over-adequacy equation.
does that mean that all the counties in all of New Jersey do not offer sports programs, do not offer any of these things, AP classes?
No.
I mean,
They
I
may
guess
not-
I'm confused about that.
They may not offer them to the extent that we do, but no, that does not mean that they're absent those items.
Okay.
Can I?
Larry?
May I, Mark, may I have this?
Go ahead.
Okay. Just a couple of little facts. We're an FG middle-class school district. Our next-door neighbor to the north, Old Bridge, is an FG middle class. They get $44 million from the state. We get less than $3 million. And one of the factors that comes in is just we're a new expanding. And so therefore, we have lots of debt all over the place, and we're big. We're 42 square miles spread all over the countryside. And then some of the factors that Mark was talking about, the political connections. But there is a whole plethora of problems, and what you're doing is you've got bureaucrats down in Trenton trying to force feed things into a straitjacket and saying 2%, and that's it.
Okay, I guess my point is if you needed me to write a letter, I could, but I can't write a letter saying, please just fund our schools. I feel like we need a little bit more documentation than that.
One point that you brought out,
Mr. Klein,
I'm sorry.
just recognizing.
One point that you brought out that's very, very valid is if we're over adequacy because we have sports programs and we have AP programs and we have this and we have that, well, so does Woodbridge, so does Edison, so does Old Bridge, and they're getting all that money. No matter what the state comes back with, whether it be the governor, whether it be the Department of Education or the Supreme Court, is they fall back on the formula. The formula is flawed, and we're taking a beating. Now, we had over 200 more students this past year, and I didn't go to work out the mathematics whether, when we figured 300 a student, if that included the 200. But let's go the other way. Let's say next year we do not get an increase in state aid, and we're roughly at $300 a student today, and we add 200 more next year. Well, now we're not getting 300 anymore, are we? We're getting much less. That's why, I don't know, you have to get angry. You have to forget about the over-adequacy baloney. You got to write and say, wait a minute, $300 on a $16,000 year per student, that don't cover it from the state. And that's what you, forget about the over-adequacy baloney, because they can throw anything they want. They can tell you we have 50% retired people. That doesn't add to the school, yet we had 225 last year, right? And the way they trick themselves is if you had 50% retired people, of the 50%, let's say at least 50% are on fixed incomes that can't afford the increase in property taxes. So whatever the state comes up with, the State Board of Ed, is baloney. And all I ask is everybody that's here, follow up on it. Write letters. Be angry. Load it up at the New Jersey Department of Education. Load them up with correspondence. But I thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yeah, I just want to pick up on one thing. It has to be noted here what got us to this place, because that's also an issue that's not being talked about here. What got us to this place is several years of defeated budgets. So forgetting about places that you could write letters to, forgetting about, maybe work jobs. I don't know. Maybe you don't have time to write letters. Right? Maybe you have lives, kids, stuff that, and you think everything is going along, you don't hear anything, everything's going along at the schools, but we had many years of defeated budgets that came before this. And every year that we have a defeated budget, we have to take that dollar amount and lower it hundreds of thousands of dollars. In some cases now, millions, $1.5 million if you added up all the defeated budgets. We'll call it $2 million on a $100 million budget, right? That got us to this place where we're talking about adequacy and cutting hairs. So when it comes to what can I do as a person who lives in the town, yeah, writing letters is good, but in the future, we don't have to worry about it now because a state law was just passed that, I don't know whether you know, but I'll loop you in. Residents no longer need to vote on a school budget as long as it's below cap. So I just want to let you all know that as long as we're doing our due diligence and keeping that money within the below cap thing, we're good. The budgets aren't going to be voted on, and that's the state law that was enacted this year. However, that doesn't mean you're never going to vote on anything again. There are going to be in the future capital projects that this district is going to need to be able to build facilities and support the things that we're looking to try and do. So while it's a nice thing to write letters and try and deal with some of these other big-ticket items, don't forget your own local responsibility of trying to support the local schools. We do what we can to make sure that our students get everything they possibly can get. And when we have to look at something to cut, it goes through a lot of debate, and it's not an easy thing to do. Don't think that we just said, okay, well, busing is easy, we'll just shoot at that. You don't think we knew you were going to come and people were being annoyed and angry and upset with the board because, we're eliminating busing? It's a big ticket item. We're not doing this in a vacuum. So I just want to make sure everybody understands, we're doing the best thing that we can do here. We need the support from the community also to, when we ask for things and budgets or, referendums that will happen in the future, remember this time right here when you're angry at us for just trying to provide the best education we can for our students. That's it. I'm good.
Thank you.
Barbara Pascal, 253 Fernhead Avenue. A lot of you know me as Bobbin. Wow, there's a lot to say. I think that first I just want to speak to whether or not we knew. They wouldn't be here if we had known today. They would have been here 4 months ago or whenever it was. So they didn't know, and I didn't know. And had we known, we would have said something a lot sooner, because otherwise, why would we be here today if we didn't care? Obviously, we didn't know. On the issue of over-adequacy, that's why I live here. I live here for my kids to come to these schools. When we moved here 14 years ago, we picked Monroe because of the schools. We looked at Old Bridge, and we looked at, I don't remember what the other one was, but we saw where those towns were headed, and we picked Monroe because we saw that they were not going in the direction we wanted them to go. Now, my son was only 3 months old at the time, so I did my research, and I'm glad I'm here. And I agree with you totally, Mr. Kaufman, that more parents need to get out and vote, but the ones that do are mostly passing the budget. The defeats aren't necessarily coming from in our districts.
Oh, you really need to look at the demographics then.
I've looked at it.
Very upset. Very upset.
Then I'll say my district, because I did. I looked at the outcome when the voting happened. Going to the point of whether or not we knew, my understanding is that when this happened, this was eliminated from the budget, that it wasn't necessarily like, a full-blown discussion with us, that it was, and I can't, as a parent, sit and look at that budget. I don't have the brain capacity for that, and find what you took out. Okay, I see what's in there, but I can't see what you took out. I need to be told. It needs to be spelled out for me. Now, maybe it was, and maybe I missed it, but it needs to be spelled out for me, all right? There's a couple things I just wanted to address on if we don't have this. The idea is somewhat appealing about a 4:30 bus and then an other option for the safety of the kids. I just want to ask one question on the legal issue of the busing and whether, because you can't control where those kids are or what's going on with them when they're on that bus, can we sign a waiver?
I'm not an attorney, I'd have to ask our board attorney.
Okay, because we'll do it. We'll sign a waiver that says we need the bus, so if we have to sign a waiver that says we know our kids are getting on that bus and we know that you're not on the bus with them, I think we would sign that. Presumably the drivers are safe and they've been checked and all that, but we would sign a waiver saying, we understand that. So a couple of issues that I think unintended consequences that could come out of not having this. Some of those towns we talked about that might have eliminated their courtesy busing. I'm interested in the teen crime rate. I don't know what it is. I don't know what ours is. I'd love to learn about it. I looked for it today. It's not the easiest thing to find necessarily, but
I'd love to know what it is. We're also different than some of those communities in that they can't just walk home. I don't even know how many miles, but it's not safe. They can't walk home. They might try, though, and that scares me, especially the middle school and the high school kids. Also, I don't know all of you, I know some of you, I don't know that all of you have kids in the schools, but have you ever tried to pick up your kid from a dance or graduation or something over here? When you go to pick up those kids, when you want us to go pick up those kids at 4:15 or 5:15 or whatever, we're going to be there till 7 trying to get out. Because there's nowhere you can't move the traffic that fast. It's a nightmare. So there are things that need to be thought through. You're asking us to pick them up, which, by the way, a lot of us can't do because we have to work. And so even if we can get there, we're going to be stuck there forever with the traffic. Now, that's something that maybe can be discussed and resolved, but I can tell you right now, just picking them up from a dance is a nightmare.
I just have to move on so that other people can speak.
So the last thing that I'm going to say is, we teach our kids, right? There's a concept of need versus want. Okay? iPads are really cool. I love the idea of the kids having iPads. I really do, and I totally support it. But I need the transportation for my kids. They don't need the iPads. I want them to have them, I do. But this is what I teach my kids. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Cliff Weinthal, 10 McFarland Circle. I just had two questions. I saw on the board agenda, items M as in Mary, N, Nancy, O, Oscar, about $108,000 worth of credits having to do with this building, I think. Is that usable money? Where's that 108,000 credits going?
I very much appreciate your sharp eye finding those dollars, but unfortunately, those are referendum funds, as I mentioned before. Those are in the general contractor's agreement to build this school, and they are reductions of the contract that will lead to perhaps surplus in the bond referendum account, which has only two options remaining, either to expend for the purpose of the question that the school was built for, or number two, to return for tax relief.
No transferability.
That's correct.
I think we need more creative accounting.
Go to jail, go directly to jail.
And just out of curiosity, the Basque money, what did that total? I understand it's been spent already, but what did it total?
As I mentioned, we had a lot of unanticipated budget demands this year, and the BASC money was committed in aggregate to those. Specifically, that's a lot of the renovations and testing and parity playground equipment and things that we put into Applegard School.
I understand it's been spent. I'm just, roughly how much has been spent? What was that revenue number?
Oh, how much has been spent? What
What was the Basque revenue number?
BASC was, they're going to pay us 10 grand a month starting in September. So we haven't received anything from them yet.
For 10 months, for 12 months, what?
September to June.
$100,000.
It's $100,000 annually once we get up to swing. But again, we haven't recognized any of that money yet because the BASC program hasn't begun. We haven't received any revenue. In anticipation of that money, we have committed additional funds out of surplus towards some of these causes that I mentioned.
Understood. Thank you.
Andy Pelori, 16 St. James Street, Monroe. I heard the orchestration of the taking away the zero period and the transportation associated with it. And Mr. Klein, I appreciate you fighting for us. Like the lady mentioned here, None of us are aware of it. Just like today's debacle, this meeting started at 7:15. There were 187 people with about 80 kids here. As you can see, the crowd is evaporating. So when the governing body doesn't care for the people, that's what it becomes, so people lose interest in doing it. I don't care. Sorry. The idea here is, I read your mission statement here, and the mission statement is to educate the kids. If the people can't get education, who are you going to give the education to? The desks or the chairs? Please, I'm more than willing to talk to Linda Greenstein. I'm more than willing to talk to Chris Christie. I'm more than willing to talk to anybody. Please let us know what we should be talking to them about. I haven't seen the budget. I'm an educated guy. You know, the lady actually admitted that she may not understand. I understand it, okay? I came here, I read this resolution. I did not know where the agenda started and where the agenda ended. I did not know why you stayed in the room for 40 minutes when 80 kids are waiting here. I don't know. I'm on the planning board. I know what we do, and we need to take care of the people who are sitting over here first before we have our meetings. I would appreciate to make sure that you put out the facts in front of the people and let them know when the school is ending. I think the school superintendent did make a phone call telling us that the school year is ended. Along with the message, if I remember correctly, there was something about eliminating the program. I tell you something, when you hear the first sentence on your voicemail, you stop it and you erase it. If this matter is this important, please make sure that we know about it so that we can fight for it. We are willing to fight. That's why these people at 9:30 without having dinner are still standing here. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's right on it. It's presented, the whole voice.
Lisa Weinthal, 10 McFarland Circle. As a result of the superintendent and business administrator's recommendations this past March, our board elected to eliminate courtesy busing. We get it. But the issue is not about eliminating a non-mandated service. The issue is the complete abandonment by administrators and elected representatives of their responsibility toward identifying feasible alternatives that provide satisfactory levels of safety and security as a standard of care for our students. The Middlesex County Business Administrator, John Nemeth, has stated during a personal call to me that although the district's not mandated to provide transportation home, the board certainly has the community responsibility and will ultimately be held accountable to see that our children are kept in a safe and secure environment until arrangements can be made for safe transport. Contrary to the rationale offered by the county superintendent that our board has to do something, board representatives have sat on their hands for 4 months, preferring a policy of having to parents figure it out. In fact, our board and administration have been presented with several concepts. A separate non-district subscription pay-for-busing service that will be the parents' responsibility to contract for has been discussed. A low-cost, no-cost option for an aftercare type program. Unfortunately, as you know, Monroe is not a walking district, and to date, there are no safe passage areas that would allow students within the prescribed state boundaries to walk the 1.5 or 2 miles that other districts can encourage. This too, though, as a long-term partnering strategy with the township, could yield infrastructure improvements that through readily available NJ DOT grants, but our board and senior administrators have chosen to ignore this too. Ironically, Monroe Township does have standards of care that are upheld. Middle school students cannot leave the premises, and incidental carpooling is forbidden if you don't have assigned consent. Security guards see middle school children onto buses, and unless you have multiple layers of approval, a grandparent can't even pick up your own grandchild. Similarly, high school students, though, have a safe place to go until 4:15 is a safe harbor that have been included in this and previous years' budgets. Sadly, these standards of care are meaningless when the program is to have parents figure it out themselves, which has been reiterated time and again at numerous public meetings. Our board has chosen the simpler route, ignore their obligation to develop options for these same children that can't leave a middle school in lieu of developing a safe and secure environment to host them in after school-sponsored programs end. It's just bizarre. Recently, Mike Gorski, Principal Goodall, Principal Chanley, and several concerned parents partnered to develop a solution that could be embraced in the short term, something that can be implemented without a significant additional cost, and a program that, while not perfect, can be made available for the coming year. If addressed properly, it could actually be a win-win. Members of the board have ignored this and all other suggestions in lieu of a figure-it-out mentality. This issue is not about fiscal responsibility. It's about properly representing the parents of this community and upholding a standard of care you were elected to sustain. Thank you.
She was a main driver for the referendum for the high school. You don't want to.
Response? Did you want to respond? Somebody asked? Okay. My name is Arlene DeMichelle, and I'm here, and I agree with most of the parents. And
Excuse me, I'm sorry, what's your address?
30 Drake Avenue, Monroe Township, New Jersey. Yeah. We're really concerned about how our children are going to get to school and come home from school. This little bit off topic, I'm more concerned about what goes on in the school once they get here and when they're here and when they're with supposed responsible adults who are taking care of them. And I was always told that when you want to find out an answer to something, get everybody in the same room and ask the question. So what I really want to know is, a couple of months ago, there was an incident with some drinking on a trip that the varsity team took to Florida, and I feel concerned because, your question was good. How did we get here? How did we get here? When my daughter, who's 8 years old now, comes into high school, I don't want to have to ask, how did we get here? How is she in a drug-infested school? How is she in a place where certain things are condoned and nobody knows about? So I'm going to tell you, I know that it happened, and I was told that it was investigated. I mean, anybody investigate this at any time?
The matter is still pending investigation.
Okay.
It is a personnel-related
Okay.
matter, so I'm not at liberty to give you any further detail about that.
Okay, excellent, but you are investigating it, correct? Okay, because I was told that it had been investigated, and the investigating was complete, and the accusations weren't founded. So we have everybody up here in the same room now, and what I'm hearing is you're investigating it. I'm worried about my daughters who are coming behind my son and who are going to be in an environment where it's condoned and it's okay. I don't want this to happen. And, maybe there's a lot of things people don't know. They don't know about the busing situation. They're saying, until tonight. To be honest with you, I didn't know about it neither. This incident with the drinking and so on and so forth and certain things being condoned. I teach my children hard work pays off. And you get into a situation where something like this happens and it's not investigated and the appropriate actions aren't taken, that says something really, really scary about the environment. And I agree with this woman here. I mean, I came here because where I came from, you didn't want to send your kid to school, okay? And I don't want to ask, when my daughter, who's 8 years old, is coming to this school, how did we get here? I came here so that I could have a great school environment for her, and I don't want to see this type of thing be condoned so that when she gets here, I can say, well, this is a drug-infested place. So therefore, I'm here, I got everybody in the same room, just something I was always taught, you're telling me is in the process of being investigated. So how do we know what the outcome of that investigation is?
Ma'am, I would not be at liberty to disclose that information. If our board attorney recommends a process for disclosure, but I do want to go back to something that you said, though.
Yeah.
And that is, you used the word condone a couple of times in your statement. And I'm not sure what your evidence would be that the school district would condone drugs or drinking in the school. But you can rest assured that if a matter is reported to us, now, of course, we can't address things we don't know.
Okay.
But the things that are brought to our attention, sometimes they're very multifaceted. There are rights and confidentiality issues that we have to be mindful of so that we're not subject to liability. But as more information comes available to us, it may initiate other sorts of other steps that we may be required or recommended that we take.
Mr. Leary?
I used to be on the Middlesex County Educational Service Commission, and, pardon me, I'm sorry. I used to be on the Middlesex County Educational Service Commission, and one of the interesting schools we have there is up in New Brunswick. It's called the Middlesex County Academy.
Okay.
And it's for children who are one step away from going down to Yardville or Annandale.
Okay.
And we send students from this school who are in bad shape or in bad company, and they get straightened out up there, and usually within a year or so, they come back into this, but with a different set of values, a different set of colleagues, and they generally come flying high and straight. But we care. My colleague and I are going hammers and tongs on all the disciplinary reports.
Okay,
And so we
excellent.
care.
Okay, excellent. That's glad. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, I was told by Dr. Gorham that the investigation was unfounded. And, I don't know what the nature of the investigation was, because I guess as far as I'm concerned, nobody really, and in the end, my concern is the people who are involved. The people who are involved are children that I've known since they're 5 or 6 years old. And if the person in charge is, putting them aside and taking them and saying, listen, what happened here stays here and this, that, and the other thing, I don't like that. I'm sorry. Call me crazy. My son wasn't even involved. He's like nowhere, he was nowhere around. But I don't think that's cool. And I don't think anybody should stand for that. So, now we have everybody in the same room. And I was told that the investigation was complete. Apparently not. What?
I am
Yeah.
waiting until she's finished. I just want to get the
Guys,
attention.
listen.
Hey, you know what?
We're going to maintain order here, okay? And we're going to
Okay.
go to a 3-minute rule, and we're not going to yell stuff out, and we're not going to interrupt people when they're speaking.
And I'm not
Okay.
interrupting.
All I want to say is that I would like for it to be investigated, and I think as a taxpayer and a citizen of this town, I have the right to know what the investigation says, and I'd like for the children involved to be reprimanded, and the person who was in charge, the appropriate things to happen, because that's the way we're supposed to be raising our children, with concerns about how we get here, how they get here, how they get home. I'm concerned about what happens when they are here.
Thank you.
My name is Chris Ryan. I live at 5 Regents Drive in Monroe. I'm on Arlene's team here. We're talking about Monroe baseball here with the incident that came up. I'm going to go through points. What happens is that we're having a problem with the varsity coach. I met with Dr. Hamilton today and Mr. Goodall. And a lot of the parents are afraid to come forward in the program because they don't want the kids getting blackballed. So a lot of this stuff that I'm going to go over is actually relayed to us by some of the parents. If you want to stop me while I'm going through it. Illegal workouts in the off-season. That was done last year. It was brought to my attention. Paid lessons is unethical in anywhere. There's towns that are right by us that actually the varsity coach was giving lessons to the kids in high school, and basically the AD said you can't do that. Then what happened was, okay, he's not doing it, but he had his assistant coaches doing it. And then recently, I've been talking to Mr. Goodall the last couple weeks and the AD, and it just, I'll go through a couple things more. Players drinking. Arlene brought that up in Florida, and Dr. Hamilton answered that. Fudging stats to make his lesson kids look better. There's kids on the team that he gave lessons to, and this goes from 7th grade to 12th grade, and it's been going on for a long time. Unsupervised players on Florida trip. These kids were unsupervised. That's what the rumor had. Putting himself first before the Monroe baseball program. And obviously, there's more important things that you guys talked about tonight, but these are important issues too. Using taxpayers' money to benefit himself. So basically, he's the head varsity coach, and he's actually using that to leverage himself. This guy supposedly, and obviously I don't know the exact figures, it could be 6 figures that this guy made on the side giving lessons, $90 an hour. You're not going to find out exactly what it was because a lot of it was probably cash. Hindering better players from playing through manipulation. Telling other parents, like myself, who are arguing with this coach, actually telling other parents oh, this Chris Ryan is giving me a hard time. I don't know who the guy is. His name's Rodriguez, is going around at a GMC varsity level during the summer and having a petition signed and using my name. Chris Ryan and somebody else is trying to get rid of me, to get rid of the coach. So, you know what? That's really unethical to actually say who's, arguing with you. Setting lineups for players he knows through lessons and benching kids he's never seen play this summer. He's actually makes the lineup for all 3 teams, and he's never seen a lot of these kids play, but he's seen them through lessons. Forcing parents to get their kids lessons, thinking, so basically a lot of the parents in Monroe, from 9 years old all the way through to the high school level, they feel that they have to get lessons through this guy, because if they don't, the kids aren't going to play. Sending out a recent email to promote a facility he used for his illegal activities of lessons, disclaimers. He put disclaimers all the email, but we know the truth. Vice superintendent's his gatekeeper. Red flags should have went up last year. Mr. Goodall mentioned this, because a lot of people called when he was going to get hired to the position of varsity coach. All his people that he gave lessons to were actually calling up, oh, you should give this guy the job, you should give this guy the job. So I don't think that's right. Actually, that's, if somebody's doing that, that's a red flag.
Do me a favor, Mr. Ryan, go back to bullet 2 up.
Which one?
You said something about superintendent and gatekeeper?
Yeah, Mr. Gorman has stopped, was brought up before about the drinking.
Oh, okay.
And there's other stuff, too. I think his son took lessons from Mr. Droney. Is that correct? What?
The drinking thing I dealt
No,
with
the
on-
lessons.
Yes.
Did your son ever take lessons?
Yes, sir.
Are you related to him at all? Are you related to Mr. Droney?
No, I'm not.
Okay, are you his godfather or something?
No, I'm not.
Okay, that's a rumor unfounded. Sorry about that. But you did take your son took lessons from him, from Mr. Droney?
Yes, I live
Okay.
in another town.
I'm sorry?
I live in another town.
Okay, good. That's great. So you know him?
I was his principal, and he worked for me for 4 years as a physical education teacher.
Okay, so that's fair. Okay, I understand. I went over the 6 figures, and basically what it is that he's using a pedestal of being the head coach, taxpayer money. He's making 8 to 11,000, I don't know the exact figure, but he's using that leverage of that job to promote his lessons throughout the whole community, and that's unfounded, unbelievable. I just went to a baseball camp, and one of the parents brought up they go to North Brunswick, okay, and I was talking to the lady, and she said, oh, yeah, my son takes lessons at the baseball warehouse in Highland Park. So I said, that's great, but unfortunately, he can't take lessons from Ryan Villig, who's the head baseball, I think that's his name anyhow. But I said, oh, why can't he do that? Because he's the head varsity coach. Well, what does that mean? Well, we have a rule that we can't do that. But in that town, they can do it. They have ethics. Here, we don't even have ethics. It's unbelievable. Athletic director told the wrestling coach he couldn't give lessons. Okay, Byers told the wrestling coach he couldn't give lessons, so why is the baseball coach able to do it? This will never, if this guy is not, he'll never stop. He'll find another way to make money off this. You can't cut the legs out of $100,000 or whatever the guy's making. And again, I don't know the exact figures. It could be 50, it could be 100, I don't know. But you're not going to stop the guy. He's going to find a way he'll refer it to another place. So I just can't believe that this has been going on this long and nobody's really done anything. And, it's not fair to the kids that, it's not fair to the kids that can't afford the lessons. So if you have a kid taking lessons and you have a kid non-taking lessons, and it's up to the coach to make a decision, what is he going to tell the parent? Oh, I'm not going to put you're not going to start, but for the last couple of years, oh, your son's great, taking a couple $1,000s from the kid and the parents. Oh, your son's great, and, but unfortunately, the kid that didn't take the lessons is going to start. That's not the way it happened. So that's all I have to say. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. Some of you may know me. My name is Lawrence Timberman, 3 Carley Court. I'm here for 2 reasons. One, I have 3 kids in the district, and they go to Remsterville. And I also have a child that gets 0-period busing. So when you think about it, I'm being taxed, plus I would have to pay extra for 0 period and pay extra because now, after so many years, Rensselaerville Learning Center is being told that they're not going to bus there anymore. I rely on that. I work. Sometimes I work 10, 12 hours a day. My husband works. We travel. And we rely on Rensselaerville. We rely on the busing. We don't have anyone else to help us, so we rely. It's something that's important to us. Now, the director is here, and she would like to say something, so I said I would come up and maybe just open it for her, but she wants to say a few words, and I think they want to stand up. There are a lot of parents here that are in the same situation where they have 0 period, and they also have children in Rensselaerville, and they want to be seen and heard.
My name is Donna Giordano, and I run the daycare center, Rensselaerville Learning Center, 230 Prospect Plains Road. And I have some comments from the owner. He wasn't able to be here today, so he asked me to read this. He says his name is Roy Sipple. My wife, Donna Sipple, and I are the owners of Rensselaerville Learning Center, located on Prospect Plains Road. For the past 16 years, we have provided care certified by the state for 98 children, ages 6 weeks to 12 years. We are sorry that we are unable to attend this meeting, but due to a previously scheduled family commitment. However, we would like to make the following comments. In the past, the students that attended Rensselaerville were bused to and from the township schools as a group, as an alternative of being transported to individual stops near their homes. It would seem more efficient to bus groups of children to and from one location rather than a number of individual stops. We would appreciate you continuing this approach. There are currently 25 families and 41 children affected by your actions. These working parents will need to make arrangements for their children to be supervised elsewhere or pay an additional amount for their share of the busing fee. It's estimated that the families affected by your actions pay $210,000 in school taxes, and Rensselaerville also pays $12,842 annually. 29 families signed a petition asking for relief. Many concerned parents are here tonight to plead their case, and we appreciate you listening to us. We thank you for providing the bus service over the past 16 years. We hope that you will consider your decision and work with us to minimize the cost to our families. Donna R. Sipple, Roy Sipple. We have a bus stop right near our school, right down the driveway. So I don't understand why the bus can't go, it goes in our driveway, and why the bus can't pick up the children right at the end of our driveway. So, I got a notice back in, I think it was April, stating that it was going to cost us $75 per bus to have the buses come through our lot and pick up the children. So I have the parents here. Anybody want to talk?
Dana Grossman, 6 Sear Court, Monroe. Both of my children have been at Rensselaerville for years. Both of them have special needs. I have contacted the before and after school program that is offered at Oak Tree. It is not appropriate for my children. To have 50 children in a cafeteria as your before and after school program as your only option because you are now no longer transporting to a place like Rensselaerville who is able to give individual attention to children that have a seizure disorder and children that are high functioning autistic. How could you stop busing? That is not their least restrictive environment to put them in a program like before and after school care. I work full-time. I am in education as well in another school district. How could you make a choice that will be of detriment to these children? Rensselaerville has been part of our community for years. Your decision to stop busing, even though they drive right past, will put them out of business and will harm my children. And how could you make that decision?
Taylor Gracia, 134 Federal Road. Again, I'm here with all these people here in support of all the families that use Rensselaerville. Both of my kids go there, and I consider this place a diamond in the rough. I truly do. They are a complete extension to Monroe. They help raise our children, they help teach our children, they help take care of our kids, and they are an extension of the public school system. My son went to kindergarten in Monroe here, and he was beyond ready from the programs that Remsterville provide for preschool and pre-K. My daughter's going to be in kindergarten next year, and we don't have full-day kindergarten in Monroe, so I really need her to go there to get that education that she needs to be ready for public school here in Monroe. They're just amazing. What about the days that public schools closed? Our kids go to Remsterville for those days because they can, because they're taken well care of there. That was one of the reasons I even went to Remsterville, because I thought it was amazing that Monroe had that service for the busing. And I'll be quite honest, I get really upset when I think about the fact that the town wants to take away so much of this busing, because we have a reputation of being community-based and family-oriented and working together and supporting each other and having amazing programs and services. And I'm embarrassed to say that, yeah, they're taking away busing. My child has to now, I don't know what I'm going to do. So again, I just think that, in addition to all of the busing, kids need to be somewhere. We need to have a safe place for them to go, and Remsterville is a huge resource that's right here, and we're so lucky to have them as part of our extended community and family in Monroe. Thank you.
My name is Samantha Sterling. I live at 82 McFarland Circle here in Monroe Township, and my son is here with me tonight, and he's been with Remsterville since he was 7 months old. He's almost 9, so it's been 8 years that Remsterville has been a part of our family. It's really important for me because I'm a working mother. I work early in the morning. I'm at work 8:30 in the morning. I get from work about 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, and this is the place where I know I can take him there, and he's always safe, and I know that the people there will support him and take care of him as I need them to. I've been an advocate for this daycare, and I've made sure that I've told people about this service. It's amazing, and we get compliments all the time that we have a place where our kids can go, and we know that I can leave him in the morning, I can drop him off at Remsterville, I pick him up from Remsterville at night, he gets to school, he gets the care he needs there, he comes back home from school, he's getting the care he needs there until I can come and get him. So I know for me, this is very critical. It's a service that I appreciate, it's a service that I continue to need, and it will impact me financially if this is going into effect, and we're expecting to pay this kind of money for daily services for busing. So I would like you to consider the fact that this does have an effect on all of us, and it is important to how we work and how we build our families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kim Bassey, and I live at 10 Preservation Drive. I'm also a member of Remsterville for several years now. If the busing goes away, this year I will have 2 kids divided amongst 2 schools, Oak Tree and Applegarth. I commute very far for my work. I leave very early in the morning, and I have to commute home in time to pick them up by 6 p.m. Now, not only where I pick them up centrally located at one stop, I'm going to have to drive to 2 schools and try to be there by a certain time. So I also have a person in my family that works for the community, and I have to say the first time I heard about the busing going away was the last day of school with the year-end message. And I thought it was very inappropriate that the message came with, oh, have a great summer, and by the way, we're canceling busing. And that's how I learned about this decision. So I hope you will reconsider and implement the busing.
Hi, my name is Karen Grant, 20 Stanley Drive, Monroe. I also have 2 children at Remsterville Learning Center, and we love it so much. And my question for all of you is, what alternatives do working parents have when the before and after school program doesn't open as early as Remsterville does, and it doesn't stay open as late as Remsterville does? What options do we have?
Hi, I'm Eric Timberman, 3 Carley Court. One of the other points that I'd like to bring up is the fact that the location of Remsterville. Monroe, you have an excellent community center, but Monroe is 44 square miles, as you know, and it's very hard and difficult to get to the other side of town. And Remsterville has been, part of our lives, and really would like to continue the busing. And I spoke to Mr. Gorsi, and I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I spoke to two other daycare centers, and they told me that they weren't going to be affected by this busing, which I don't understand, because we're affected by the busing. It was Developmental Learning Center, which is on the other side of town, and the Applegarth School, and they also bus back and forth to the public schools. But I also don't understand why you wouldn't put 30 children on a bus rather than have to put them on all different buses. I would think that that would be more convenient for everyone in the area. For the safety of the children,
Applegarth is one of our schools. It's a. It's
No,
not
there's Apple Daycare Center that's also in Monroe, and their directors, nobody knew anything about busing being stopped to them. But we got the notices that it was going to be stopped to us. So I don't know what the difference is there. Anybody know?
Are you finished with your statement?
No, well, I'm asking you a question. Do you know why they didn't receive any information about it, but we received it?
Well, I have a statement about this, if you'd like me to make it at this time, or if you wanted to finish yours, I'd be happy to
Okay.
hold.
For the safety of the children go right out our door. We are there with them. We make sure they get on the bus, on the right bus. They are always safe, and I think that's what a lot of the parents are saying, is they want that safety. We're open longer than Basque, and we also are open days off from school. And I don't know what these parents are going to do if they don't have us, because they're not going to be able to attend Remsterville if I fill their slots with other people, that aren't being bused. That's it, I guess. It's going to hurt us if you do this. And one more thing, I'm sorry. I did make, an attorney for the school made all kinds of notes and letters to different people on the, Mike, I know we sent letters to you, and we got no answers. We tried to get something from the mayor, no answers. No one wants to give us an answer, and we need an answer because I have to schedule for school. It's already July, and I don't have answers for parents of what they're going to do.
I can tell you that back a few months ago, we had another business come to us and ask us to create the same relationship that we've had with Remsterville. At that point, many of the board members who were new or newer didn't even know that those types of relationships existed. And basically, what that amounts to is subsidizing private businesses by providing buses. Remsterville is a for-profit business. And so are these other businesses that are coming to us and ask us to do the same kind of relationship. So what we decided to do was to have businesses who want to have that service pay for those services. And that's basically it. So one of the alternatives would be that Remsterville pays for the busing and doesn't defer it to their.
We pay enough tax already.
Remsterville pays taxes, and the buses come through my parking lot.
But you have to understand, we cannot subsidize every business that asks for busing, and that is, if you look back in the records, we had a whole debate.
Instead of dropping the kids to home, you drop to Ramsterville in one stop. You save 15 stops per bus. Think about it.
So
it's more economical, because then I pick up my kids to her. Instead of the bus making 20 stops, it makes one stop, safe. Because I have somebody that look at my kids when you get off and get in. Think about it.
I also spoke to the bus company today, and they did tell me that if you asked for your child to be picked up at a friend's house, they'll do that. But they won't pick them up at Remsterville, where they come through my parking lot, and there's a stop right at the end of the parking lot. And they're telling me, no, I'm not going to do it.
Okay.
So what sense does that make?
Mr. Gorski.
They're not coming through my parking lot.
Oh, sorry.
Ma'am?
I'm going to say, my name is Kim Bassey, again, 10 Preservation Drive. I think I understand the other business that came to you about busing. I won't disclose their name because my kids also go there in the summer. For lack of a better term, Remsterville is a daycare center. The kids go there from September to June, and they get bused to and from school. It was a godsend when the daughter was in half-a-day kindergarten, because I commute far, and she was an afternoon kindergartner, so how would I get her on the bus in the afternoon to go to school. And who's going to supply that? It's a legal right for school to supply busing for the kid. So I need that. However, the other vendor that tries to get busing happens to be a camp. They don't even have the facilities to house children in the wintertime. My kids go there, I'll probably get kicked out. They're enjoying their summer there. I pay extra. If I want to get them bused to camp, I have to pay extra for busing. And camp costs as much as a car just for 8 weeks in the summer. So while you pay daycare, they're getting paid to watch my children before and after school, and they're there at times that I need them. Again, I commute far. I'm a working mother. I work for a pharmaceutical company. I work on oncology drug trials. So I do feel that I impact the community greatly, and I do need care for my children. And I don't think that the two centers are similar in nature for the busing. So I just wanted to state, if it's the same company that I think it is, it's totally different situation.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, I thought the group was finished, I beg your pardon.
Hi, my name is Amory Esposito, and I live at 6B Public Road. Not only am I a teacher, but I'm also a parent, and it does affect me because if this goes up, they have to raise my tuition. And just like Jalen's mom, I can't afford that. I'm a single mother with 2 kids. So I'm sorry, I'm just nervous. But like Donna said, the buses come through. The reason why they come through is they pick our kids up first, and then they go at the end of Public Road and pick up that stop so they don't have to walk across the street and get hit by a car. So if they're cutting through our parking spot to keep our kids safe from not going across the street, why can't they just stop for 1 minute? Because I put them on the bus, and it takes seconds. And another thing is, you guys mentioned how with other schools you don't know who goes on the bus. We know our names. We have to know who goes on the bus and who gets off the bus. That's why these parents go to work with a relief, because they know where their kids are as soon as they get done with school, and that they're going to know where they're going to be when they get out of work. That's why it's important that we cannot get rid of that. Thank you.
Good. You want to speak to it?
All right. Thank you for your comments. Approximately 9 months ago, we received a request from a private day camp, Eagle River Day Camp. It's a matter of public record now because it's gone through the notes from the Building Ground Transportation Committee meeting, and it was also discussed in public, and it's in the minutes from a prior board meeting. Their demand to the Board of Education was that the Board of Education provide school public resources to provide transportation services to deliver students in the morning and after school to this for-profit camp. It's fundamentally unlawful to use public tax dollars to provide resources and services for a private entity. It has been the practice before that has morphed into what it is, particularly with Rumsterville. It was never that significant when it started, and with enrollment increases and the development of the program there, over the years it has grown more monumental. The board reviewed the costs for the Eagle River Day Camp, and it was also brought to the attention of the board by representatives of Eagle River that we have been previously providing these transportation services to Rumsterville. The costs currently that were proposed that the Board of Education absorb for providing services for this for-profit enterprise, Eagle River, was in the vicinity of $17,500 a year. When Rumsterville's was calculated, it was a little less. I don't have the figures in front of me, but I think it was about 15. That's a significant amount of resources that does not exist in the budget for this purpose and is unlawful. Now, the point that the bus is going through the parking lot anyway was considered, and what the proposal was that was given to Rumsterville was not students that were adjacent to the school. If we could accommodate a route directly near the school, and it's not costly to the district, that was considered and not included in your cost. What the proposal was for Rumsterville is for students that are not adjacent to the school and would require an additional cost. That's a fact. I reviewed that analysis myself. So the Building Grounds Transportation Committee unanimously recommended the the disapproval of Eagle River's request, and furthermore, at that time, had requested the discontinuance of Remsterville's services, but out of courtesy for the parents, had decided to do it through the end of the school year, June 30th, to provide several months of service with full notification made to Rumsterville for you to make your other arrangements. It's now July, and I can tell you that I have not heard one request from Rumsterville as an organization, who is what the board is dealing with, either acknowledging the fee schedule or attempting to make any other arrangements. So it was presented then to the full board, and the full board, I believe at the time, voted unanimously also to support the recommendation from the Building Grounds Transportation Committee. That's the problem we face. Number one, it's unlawful. You're raising monies through taxation through the whole community to provide busing services for a private enterprise. And number two, if we could absorb that in the past in the budget as an accommodation to parents, it simply can't be done anymore. You see the transportation issues that we're facing tonight with late-run courtesy busing, and those are our students.
Hi, my name is Fortunato Orlando for Louis Lane. I have two kids, Ramsterville. I think that this is a loophole because busing from Ramsterville is not illegal because you are not sponsoring a private business, okay, or lawful, like you said. The bus has to pick up my kids from somewhere, correct?
A scheduled bus route that is done by our transportation department.
Right. Now, if it's Ramsterville or it's Fort Louis Lane, it doesn't matter. It's a pickup point. Therefore, the bus, we save money, we save the environment because we don't provide too much pollution because the bus makes one stop, it picks up how many kids? 41 children. Think about it. So why is it lawful?
It's unlawful because you're using public tax dollars to provide those routes. Now,
you still have to pick up my kids.
The transportation
or give me the
department,
money back.
Transportation
so
department.
I give to Donna, and Donna pay you.
All right, the transportation department has scheduled bus routes that they work very diligently on a computer to efficiently deliver students to and from school. To deviate from those routes is extremely costly, especially to go into Remsterville.
You have a pickup before Ramsterville and after Ramsterville. It's a midpoint where you pick up 41 people.
Remsterville is not a scheduled bus stop for the district, sir. It's not.
There's a bus stop right at the end of the driveway.
You may be referring to one bus stop, ma'am. We're talking about a fleet of operation.
A couple buses that stop at the end. There's a bus that stops across the street, and there's a bus that stops at the end of our
Do you know
driveway.
what grade level, what students we are? Do
Yeah,
you know
there's
if
a
those
middle
are special
school, and
ed or
there's
regular ed? You can't
no,
just
there's
make
a
a general
middle
comment
school,
like that.
and there's Oak Tree. Oak Tree children, where are you? Oak Tree. Public Road. She lives on Public Road. You'd have to pick them up to bring them to Public Road, which is right there. Right there. We pay taxes.
Okay, we will send you a map. So in this way, you can start.
They're
Sir,
coming through my
I'll
parking
invite
lot.
you in to look at the transportation routes, which I have. We have experts who work on these routes. You may be referring to one bus that passes by, but what happens previously has been numerous buses going to Rumsterville
Yeah,
dropping off
we have special ed
students.
buses, which they have to bring.
Different tiered busing that we have here in the district. You can't just say, I see one bus and now you should stop here for everybody. That's not how it operates.
Okay, and I want to go back to the, us sending you letters. The attorney has sent letters, and no one has answered our letters.
Ma'am, I've responded to every letter and every email and every phone call that I've received on this matter. And I have never had any correspondence from an attorney because I would have referred it to the boards.
Well, the attorney's letter is right here. If you'd like me to read it, it's right here. So are you telling me that the bus that goes through our parking lot, okay, to turn around, and there's many buses that come through the parking lot, they are not going to pick up my children, or they will not pick up my children at the end of the road, but yet they'll go to Developmental Learning Center and they'll pick them up at the end of their driveway? What is the difference? Tell me what the difference is.
Public and private.
They're what?
Public and private.
No, they're private. Developmental Learning Center is just as private as we are.
Ma'am, I will be happy to invite you in so that you can get a better perspective on the routes. But I can assure you that the list of fees that I sent to you are for out-of-the-way services that are currently providing to Rumsterville. Now, that's the best way I can explain this. It's not on a route where we can just open the door and then do that. We have tiered busing that runs all day long, and what you're looking at is not the full picture.
Okay, so you're telling me that the bus that comes through my lot, okay, is not on the bus route? Then why are they coming through my lot?
A bus that you may be talking about may be on a direction to a bus route, but we're not talking about one bus, ma'am. We're talking about a whole fleet of tiered busing for all different grade levels, all different schools. That's the issue here, not one bus.
There's 2 buses that come by there, so you're telling me for those 2 buses, you're gonna come through my lot and pick up my children?
Again, I'll reiterate my comment from before. If we have a stop adjacent to Remsterville and it's of no additional cost to the district to have the student released there, we offer to do it.
And when are we gonna know that? So that these parents can make choices, arrangements for where they're gonna bring their children?
Remsterville, as an organization, was provided with the routes that were not adjacent to the building. It's Remsterville's obligation to contact the parents.
No, I got no specific answer from you as to what routes we were going to have. Back in April or May when we called you, you said you weren't sure what routes were going to be coming to Remsterville.
I don't have our transportation routing software with me, but again, I'll invite you in to look at it to your satisfaction. I can't do anymore.
And I'm telling you, I know specifically there's...
Call me tomorrow. My name's on the website, number's on the website. I assure you, I do know.
No, right now you don't have on your mind what is the route that stops. That's what, I'm sorry if you misunderstood. You don't remember exactly what are the big.
If I put Remsterville's address down as my home address, does that count as my bus stop?
When that's done and a parent calls in as a courtesy to temporarily change a bus stop to a friend's house, grandma's house, we make that accommodation if they come and do it in writing and it's...
No, Remsterville has been our bus stop since we started kindergarten at Oak Tree when the doors first opened. And I actually, if I am home on a day where my children are going to school, I drive them from my house down Applegarth Road and bring them to the Remsterville bus stop and watch them get on the bus and pick them up and get them off the bus on a day that I would be home or a day that I was around for a school function. However, the days that I'm at work, I drop them at Remsterville. It is their bus stop. So for all practical purposes, it is my address where the bus should stop at the end of my street and pick up my kid. So should I change my address to Prospect Plains Road so that the bus will stop there and pick up my children?
If you have a specific
So
instance, I'd
what
like
are you
to
going to
discuss it.
provide us?
Please call me.
What are you going to provide for parents who work in this community so that our children can get to and from school? Because we obviously commute farther and longer these days to jobs so that we can pay our taxes so that you all can be paid. So therefore, we need to know what we're going to do with our kids during the day so that they can even get to school.
To and from school, we have an obligation to provide, and we will continue to provide. But what we cannot provide is transportation services for private organizations.
So where should I put my kid in the morning before the bus comes
Ask the
when I'm
private
already at work for
organization.
3 hours?
But the
Ask the-
private organization is paying taxes, $12,000 a year in school taxes. It's not like you're doing it for free.
I pay my taxes, and I also pay for the private organization separately. So therefore, my tax dollars for my busing is already being paid for through my taxes, just that my address of 10 Preservation Drive is Prospect Plains Road.
I do appreciate your comments, but we can go on and on for days, I guess. Right now, I would say that the best thing to do is to contact Mr. Gorski and go through this. I do know that the documentation was given to Rumsterville. If that was not given to the parents, well, then that has to be dealt with also. But if you want to come in, you're welcome to do that, but I would like to also give everyone here an opportunity to speak now. Thank you.
My name is Umar Yusufzai, 7 Whitson Lane. I'll be quick. I have 2 comments and a question. The first thing is, so in my community, including my children, we have 3 children. They go to both zero period and tag. And we are in the same situation that you heard from several people over here. So one of the proposals that's being debated here, and you made the motion about the 4:30 time, would that cover the tag? Talented and gifted programs?
Tag and basic skill routes were never cut from the budget. Those were, and still are, in the budget.
Okay, thank you. So the comment that I have is about communication, and Mr. Klein, you made a very passionate speech and comments that we couldn't respond to. I think, we live in an age where a lot of us use internet, email for communication, and I believe one of the reasons why you have so many people here is because there was an email sent out. So I really urge the board to use email as a form of communication for important messages, so we can, represent, we can get angry on our governor and our representatives of Congress, and bond together to do something for the community. Okay, so we'd really appreciate if you could do that. And the third point is regarding the cost for zero period. Why is it $250K when other costs like the 4:30 one is estimated to be a lot lower?
The entire, we're talking about the entire run it would be 3 runs, and that's the total cost was $450,000. So to have one run for those schools would be $100,000 instead of $450,000. So we still would see a savings, and that was my point.
I understand that, but for the zero period, which is a hardship, particularly for us in the morning, the cost is estimated to be a lot higher, right? It's $250K?
Correct.
I'd like to understand why is there such a big difference?
Part of the reason is because it's before the school day opens. So you're having drivers now, you're opening up the transportation fleet earlier, and you're bringing in extra drivers for that period. I have a schedule in the office that details how that 250 is calculated, but that's been in a couple budgets for review now, and I'm certain that that number is factually correct.
Okay. Would you provide a
Yeah.
detailed breakdown of that?
Yep. Send me an email request.
Okay.
My email address is on the website, and I'll be happy to send you the schedule.
Okay. And Mr. Klein, you mentioned that, actually it was Mr. Kaufman, that the budget has been defeated, and this is why we're at this stage for several years now. I'm just curious if there are other municipalities in the county where the budget has been defeated in a similar manner, and if they had to cut this busing from their programs. Can you guys comment on that?
I know Mike had done a lot of analysis on other districts that had the courtesy busing either still in play or had it removed or never had it. The exact correlation to when their budgets got defeated and when and if it cascaded into the loss of courtesy busing, I don't know if we ever did any statistical analysis at that point, because from our perspective, we were looking at it not because of the fact that the budgets were defeated, although it is a critical factor. We have to deal with the here and now. What happened in the past, while relevant to the budget, doesn't impact the decision or in total what we do today. We had to know from the analysis that Mike did, from all, let's just say Middlesex County, all the other towns in Middlesex County, how many of them still have courtesy busing, how many of them don't have it, how many never had it, and what can we do to try and lessen our exposure with this over-adequacy issue to know that at some point the county can turn around and say, because they have the final decision on our budget, if we're the odd man out in Middlesex County, and I'm not saying we are, but we could be amongst the last that have courtesy busing, when we go before them to have them pass our budget, they could say, we'll give you everything except courtesy busing, and you have to take that out, and then we would be forced. So, as Mike mentioned, I believe before, this is not new news to Monroe Township. It's new news to maybe a lot of people in the room because it's hot now. Last year, it was off the budget. And then because of things that happened, we got more money from the state, we were able to bring it back. But prior to that, at least for 2 or 3, maybe even 4 more years prior to that, it was close to being cut. And, because we were able to work things out with the township, because we lost the budgets, right? We were able to kind of come up with workarounds through being able to make things happen. But don't think that this is something that new that just happened. It just, before we backtracked last year and before, 2 years before that, we were able to do workarounds. But at some point in time, you got to fish or cut bait. And unfortunately, this could be the year now, or it is the year where this had to happen. Now, I, for one, am very interested to see, okay, we've eliminated courtesy busing because you county guys told us that we need to be thinking about this. I better make sure that I see a significant amount of money coming back from the state, because if I'm going to get a pittance back from the state because we eliminated courtesy busing, then it doesn't make sense to do that. But unfortunately, as was explained here, anybody know math in this room? I'm thinking that a lot of people know math. I defy anybody that can count to go to the New Jersey Department of Education and download their document on how to calculate funding for schools. I defy you to be able to figure that document out. It's about 80 pages long, and it's designed to have so many undefined variables, because with an undefined variable, you can't do the math, right? That there are so many ways that they can kind of make it up as they go. Between the adequacy and all these other things, it's almost impossible to determine how much money we're supposed to get or validate what we do get is the right amount. So it's unfortunate that we are at this place right now, but as we've said, it hasn't come easy to make this call. So.
Okay. And I'll just wrap up and I'll say, at least on my behalf and my family's behalf, I would really like to see an alternative presented where I could use a pay-per-use service. I know there was probably some challenges that happened in the past that you alluded to. I'm not familiar with what really happened there, but that would really help my family out. And I suspect that if this goes away, it would help other families out as well, and they'd be willing to put some money in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Glenn Borsick, 51 Bentley Road. I'm actually looking for clarification on page 20 of the board action items. There was an item on there about the physical education sections for AVID students, and I know the wording was changed from 0 period to alternative. Could you elaborate a little bit more on what options you're looking at?
Yeah, during the transition from the 6th grade elementary to the middle school, there was a brand new schedule implemented. So one of the casualties of the schedule was time for the AVID kids, which we're now in our 4th year of implementation. This year, we are brainstorming ways throughout the year to get them more time in its simplest sense without taking away other classes. So because it's an elective class and because all the kids go through criteria and volunteer to go to the program, we tried to be flexible in giving them more school time. So we're trying to flex the time where they'll now attend physical education one day after school, each week, plus a 5th rotating day or before school. But we took it out of the 0 period piece to just leave it as an option for before and after school.
When will that decision be made on where that's going?
A lot of it has to do with the outcome of tonight.
Okay, well, and that was going to be part of my question, because one of my concerns is the fact that, as you say, it is an elective course. I have a daughter in AVID now at the middle school, and it does preclude any other elective being able to do that. We had been told originally that they would have the option to do those after school, but it was really just in a club environment. It wasn't really an elective. So if the gym was going to be after school, I was hoping, since that is a requirement that they have to take, that busing would be provided for that, regardless of the outcome.
That's one of the discussions we're having.
Okay, because TAG and basic skills are elective programs as well.
No, they're required by state, so that rationale would lend to that argument of academic that we have to provide for the kids.
Regardless of the outcome of the vote tonight.
But again, I can't speak on that until there's outcomes and discussions about it.
Well, you could still speak to, based on if the vote was still tonight to not do the 4:30 run, but if you're saying that it is required similar to TAG and basic skills, you could comment on that.
And that's where the piece was put into the board minutes tonight for.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Wait, just to clarify, this is included then? Busing is included with this? Jay?
We're having conversations about including it in the tag and basic skills piece, which wouldn't be an additional expense.
But they'd get busing
Yes,
for this?
that's where the conversation is.
I just have 2 points to make. First of all, some of the parents made note about when you had a vote on the budget, that the people who came out and voted, the families voted for it. Just to give you a little background, we get a report the night of the election, the vote, and it's broken down by polling places. And you find that the polling places that represented the retired communities or the over 55 communities, they would show up at the rate of 35 to 50% of registered voters. When you went into the family communities, the family polling places, it was as low as 4 or 5%, and maybe the highest was 8%. So the parents were not showing up to vote for the budget. Now, I also heard parents complaining that they pay taxes and therefore they're entitled to all this. Why don't you look at it the other way? Or let me go over one thing. The other taxpayers, look through the eyes of taxpayers that have no one involved in the school system. And we had all those trailers, and this board promised the taxpayers that when we did away with the trailers, that money would be returned via reduced taxes, school taxes. When that was done, and we did away with, what was it, 70-some-odd trailers, you had the parents complaining here because they didn't want to pay to play. There were 3 things. It was pay to play, the science program, and one other item they wanted reinstituted. Maybe that was zero-period busing. So what they did is the money that was promised to the taxpayers in tax relief was spent to save programs that the parents wanted. So what about the rest of the taxpayers that are paying $500, $600 more each year to support the children in the school district? So that's something you got to look at. That's basically all I have to say. There was something else, but I forgot.
My name is Irfan Matawala. I'm on 16 Burn Court in Monroe Township. My question and comment is not specific to the busing or, because I think a lot of the issues that we're talking about, whether they be budget cuts or voting, or these are the same issues that are going to plague us year after year. You're never going to get surplus of funds. You're always going to get cuts. And so those challenges exist year to year. But I think whether you're in the private sector or in the public sector, when you don't have answers to these questions, sometimes you look to other, whether they be townships or companies that are maybe doing a better job of handling these kinds of situations, whether it be from a leadership standpoint or a community involvement standpoint. Who do we look at from a Middlesex County perspective or a New Jersey state? Who's doing a better job than us? I think one of the examples used was Old Bridge has a larger amount of funding than we do. Is that largely because the families don't come out and vote at the rate of 4%?
No, that's state.
What's the comparative?
That's the state.
So I would say, what would help us understand where the key issues are is, I think, to say it's entirely a family, not the community participating enough or blaming it entirely on the leadership probably isn't fair. But I would like to see some sort of comparative on who's doing a good job of this, who's getting the results that we're looking for, and what are they doing and what are we not doing, so we can model ourselves.
Basically what it is, and this came out earlier, that we offer advanced classes.
So do other communities.
You would think that the State Board of Education wants all the districts to reach.
But
what
look,
they're doing to us is they're forcing us to come down
I understand the
this way.
limitations. I sit on the board for the High School of Economics and Finance in New York City. So I understand the limitations. I understand it's not always an equal playing field. But what you do is do comparatives. Just like you have high school rankings in the state and you see where you stand relative to everyone else, I would think that we would look at these kind of comparatives, whether they be voting turnouts, demographics, or any of these other statistics that would help us isolate the problem. Because the problem's going to change year after year, right? We have our own unique challenges. Our demographics are different than, let's say, Old Bridge. But how do we get insight into that so we can participate in some of those solutions? Right now, when you're telling us write a letter, to be honest, I largely don't participate in any of this because it always falls on deaf ears. I don't know, in order to be able to produce a convincing argument, I need data. I need something that can give me a comparison.
Dr. Hamilton would like to address.
Yeah, I really appreciate your posture. And one of the things that it's really going to be imperative for our community to do is make sure we have a voice, and we have a community representative who serves on Save Our Schools. It is a very rapidly growing organization, and they do have audience with people who can apply pressure at the legislative level to make these changes. And that's what we can do. We can begin, and I understand your disappointment or your frustration with writing letters, and often it falls on deaf ears. There is a sample letter on the website that was posted there for folks who wanted to just download, print, and mail. There is information on there about the potential benefits of fully funding the school formula. But in essence, to address how this impacts us long-term is to really say to the legislatures, we need you to fully fund the school funding formula. That is really what we can do as a community, and Save the Schools organization has a bigger voice in that conversation right now than you or I would be able to have as an individual.
I agree with that, but I also think that in addition to getting the full funding, one of the responsibilities we're going to have is, are we making the right decisions with the funding that we have? We're not able to get insight into that without that kind of data. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of folks probably in the room who have large scope of responsibilities, managing large budgets, and anyone who manages a budget knows that unless you're in the details of it, you can hide a lot of things, or it becomes difficult for somebody on the outside, unless you have some sort of audit background, to be able to sift through that and get into the details. So I'm not suggesting anyone's hiding anything, but I'm suggesting that it's difficult for anyone to look at a budget, no matter how you produce it, just like these formulas are difficult to decipher. You need somebody to be able to provide some sort of comparatives, because I don't think we're going to figure it out. Everyone has a day job, as you guys do, and we're not going to be able to figure it out on the nights and weekends. But what we can see is how are we doing relative to our peers. If we know that, then we can tell if we're doing a good job or a bad job. Right now, I can't tell. And I'm not sure if anyone on the board can tell. How are we doing compared to the other townships in Middlesex County? We used an Old Bridge example. How do we sit? Are we in the middle? Are we at the bottom 10%?
We're comparable.
With regard to the adequacy discussion that we had before, that's really a basis for state aid distribution going forward. Our district, unfortunately, is among the highest, if not the highest in the county for being above adequacy. We've made strides to reduce that. In 11-12, we were over $13 million above adequacy. In 13-14, we've cut that down to about $7.5 million.
And we're the highest in the state, you said, or in the county?
That will generate more of the state aid pie for Monroe going forward. And it will continue if we continue to decrease that.
Okay. When I said comparable, I was talking about what are the results from the high school performance exams. When you take a look at those, we're well performing, particularly, and that in our county we're good. Overall, some parts of northern New Jersey do quite better than us.
Right. I mean, our high school rankings, it's somewhere in the middle tier, right? We're somewhere around 90, if I remember correctly. That's not at the top 10%. It's not even in the top 20. We're right at dead center. So, and those are the school statistics, and I understand that. But I'm talking about how we manage our funding, right? I mean, the issue is, the academic part, that's a different discussion. But from a funding standpoint, how are we doing it? How are we interacting with our legislature? How are we getting the results that we're all looking to get? And I understand everyone has different interests. But when we compare ourselves from a school perspective and the services we provide, how do we compare? And we should be able to break it down, whether it's the bus service, the before-after-school programs, the level of AP programs, and you can break that up and come up with an easy matrix that tells us where we stand. At least that would give us a report card. We don't have that.
Best service in the county, and we're the 5th best in the entire state.
In what category?
The operation of our bus fleet with 65 buses.
Mr. Gorski?
Starting in about November, we begin with discussions in the Finance Committee about the budget, about what the budget's framework is looking like for next year. And then this year we had a budget steering committee, which invited representatives from the community to come in and offer viewpoints about what they thought was important in the budget and what recommendations they would support to get us to cap when we were over and decisions like that. The state requires that the user-friendly budget's posted on the website. There's a great deal of user-friendly information, I hate to use the same word, but available there that a layperson can digest and get a lot of. And I have made myself available to many members of the community to come in and actually go through the budget book, which consists of about this much individual paper in detail, to see actually where every dime is spent.
All right. Thank you. Well, again, appreciate the time.
Good evening, Chrissy Skirby, 8 Seminole Court. I know that you have a decision to make this evening about the late runs. I also wanted to know if you were considering at all the zero-period buses for the 6 elementary schools that will have the band, advanced band, and the chorus students all affected. And if not, I know tag and basic skills after school at the elementary schools will have busing. I know at Oak Tree there's about 6 or 7 buses that leave after school for BASC and tag. They're about a quarter full. Would the board consider moving band and chorus to an after-school program and bus those children home along with the BASC and tag students?
I wouldn't be, administratively, I wouldn't be able to respond to that without looking at how that would impact scheduling and teachers and what the ramifications of that. It's perceivably a viable option, but I would be hesitant to make a commitment to that without really looking at the ramifications.
Okay, because taking away the busing for the students in those 6 elementary schools before school will severely cut children's opportunities to participate in those programs, as well as the late buses for the middle school and the high school will cut people's opportunities from participating in sports and/or clubs. So if we're going to give it back to or make options available for the middle school and the high school, I'd really hope to think that you would think about the students in the elementary school as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Jill DeMayo, 48 Linwood Drive. I just wanted to clarify, Dr. Hamilton, the organization that Dr. Hamilton keeps talking about, Save Our Schools New Jersey, .org, if you're interested in going there and learning about what we're doing. There is a national organization called Save Our Schools, but we are SaveOurSchoolsNewJersey.org. So if anybody's interested in figuring out what we're doing and where we're advocating and where we need help, that's the website.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Corrine Masters, 9 Michaela Court. In regards to the Oak Tree Applegarth busing, I would like to know if anyone will be comparing the amount of bus incidents from last year to this year, since there will now be a layover time at each of those schools.
Sorry, restate that, please.
Sure. In regards to the Oak Tree and Applegarth busing for September, I'd like to know if anyone will be comparing the amount of bus incidents from last year to this year, since there will now be a layover time at each of the schools.
When you say bus incidents, you mean discipline referrals?
Yes, bullying.
Well, we hadn't thought about that, but that's certainly something we could do.
Okay. And maybe that could be done like on a month-to-month basis, I was thinking. And then also, will the principals at both schools be working collaboratively on incidents regarding the children from the schools when an incident does occur?
Yes. Out of order, Mr. V. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Jody Desai, 2 Northwind Court. My concern, we're talking a lot about courtesy busing and zero-period busing. In regards to the Applegarth busing, I understand that Barclay Brook Brookside, they share buses, everyone goes on the same bus. They share a parking lot. Applegarth and Oak Tree will not share a parking lot. They will have to go across the street. Buses will have to start at Oak Tree and go to Applegarth. My concern is my daughter, who will be going into 1st grade, she will now have to sit on the bus for 10 minutes longer, which will impact the ultimate time that she'll have to spend on the bus. Being a parent, if I think that's too much time, I will then decide to go to the school and pick her up, which will then cause even more traffic issues. are we entertaining the idea that we could implement specific buses just for Applegarth because of the very unique situation there? Again, to alleviate traffic issues, I already see it in the mornings if I drop my child off at Oak Tree. I see the backup of parents looking to drop children off. And my concern is ultimately, if these buses keep these children on for an hour, 40 minutes, whatever it is, parents will come out, start dropping kids off, and it'll be a little bit like mayhem over there. Thank you.
Mr. Gorski?
Yes. Ma'am, in regard to your comments, Dennis Ventrillo, Doug Gillian, our transportation director, and I have looked closely at all of the routes affecting Oak Tree and Applegarth schools. And as presented to the Building Grounds Transportation Committee recently, Oak Tree is going to open at 8:55, Applegarth at 9:05. To absorb the students being on the same buses, we've added 2 buses to the routes. So we have a total of 18 buses and 2 vans, which will be serving both Oak Tree and Applegarth School. One of the benefits of the 10-minute differential in time is that the siblings will be able to wait at the same bus stop. Parents won't have to get one kid out the bus in the morning and then get another one ready and wait with them at a time later on. And most importantly, with this review of the routes, we can state at this time that we do not, the longest that a child right now is on a bus at Oak Tree is 40 to 45 minutes. We've timed out every route that we have scheduled for next year, and we can make a statement that according to our estimates that no child will be on a bus for longer than 40 minutes now. That's actually slightly less than the Oak Tree service that's going on right now. So, we're confident that 40 minutes is a reasonable time for a student to be on a bus, and we're going to actively manage this to make sure that it never exceeds that. Now, granted, there'll be some inclement weather days or unforeseen circumstances, and especially for the first week or week of 2 of school, where adjustments are being made, and we find a lot of occurrences where parents overtalk with bus drivers and that familiarity develops, which causes delays. But 40 minutes is the most we look at a child being on a bus.
I wanted to add, again, Taylor Gracia, 134 Federal Road. I've been teaching 15 years in a district, I don't want to say where. I was just curious as to why, I know in an elementary where I teach band, chorus, basic skills, and academically talented programs are all offered during the school day. Like, they don't have all of these extra busing for these programs after school, so I didn't know if that was something to consider or if it had to be. I mean, obviously it doesn't have to be after school since my district doesn't do that. I just know that when I teach, my kids leave once a week to go to chorus if they are in chorus. If they're a basic skills child, they are pulled out for certain periods a week to go to that. Another guy, I just find it a little upsetting that since my child doesn't need extra help, that he's doing very well in school and that he's also not gifted and talented, he doesn't get to get on the bus to go to Remsterville. Just because he doesn't need those extra services, it just feels like he's going to lose that because he doesn't need those extra services. So I didn't again, also consider how the programs are offered. That just might be something to think about. I don't know why Monroe does it after school. I was just throwing it out there. Thanks.
Well, the primary reason for that is to avoid the pullout and disruption in an instructional program. The continuity of care, we believe, is academically and educationally more sound than a pullout program.
Hi, Christy Skirby again, 8 Seminole Court. I had a follow-up question to Mrs. Desai's question about the Oak Tree Applegarth busing. We're taking the equivalent of about 5 to 6 buses out of Oak Tree. Why wouldn't we use that to reroute, to create new routes, for those for Oak Tree and those for Applegarth? Mill Lake and Woodland does that, right? Is that correct? Mill Lake and Woodland have different routes? Is there a huge problem with Mill Lake and Woodland parents complaining that siblings don't wait on the same bus stop?
You're talking about a much more condensed area of town as opposed to Oak Tree. The routing schedules that we've looked at and the mapping programs that we have all indicate that this 10-minute differential in opening is the most efficient way to transport the students.
But are we really to believe 18 buses during rush hour traffic on Applegarth Road with the senior center due to open, 18 buses will make it across the street
Yes,
in
ma'am.
10 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
And
In fact-
unload and be able to begin school?
Yes, and in fact, we've had, I think, Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we had 7 trial runs with buses?
With 6 buses. Six buses, not
everything went
18,
seamlessly.
6.
Hmm?
And how long did that take? 10 minutes?
7 minutes, 7 minutes.
7 minutes. So 3 times more would only take 3 more minutes? Yeah?
Yes, yes.
12 buses can get over in 3 minutes? But it took 6 buses 7 minutes. The math doesn't add up.
Well, our routing software does add up, and it indicates that this is the most efficient and effective way to handle this.
And will there be a police officer outside directing traffic? It's rush hour traffic. If anybody has ever dropped off at Oak Tree School, you can sit there for at least a good 5 minutes to pull out.
We do
How
not-
is 18 we're going to have parents dropping off, and we're going to have 18 buses all trying to cross Applegarth Road at the same time during rush hour with a new huge senior center going up with additional traffic. Are we going to have a police officer or somebody to stop the traffic?
No.
Why aren't we looking into that?
We have looked into it, and there's no identifiable need for that at this time. Again, if circumstances arise that we have problems with the 40 minutes, which is unanticipated, then we'll look at additional busing. According to Mr. Ventrilo, who rode every route that we went through a dry run, there was never an area of congestion or any difficult area for a bus to turn or maneuver during this whole route.
Well, it has to turn, it's going to congest the parking lot at Oak Tree because 18 buses lined up to make a right out and then a left into Applegarth right there. It's going to cause a huge congestion right in that little area. We only did it with 6. We didn't do it with 18.
We have many buses more than that leaving the high school and the middle school.
Not crossing the street to get into another parking lot
Problem.
during rush hour.
I don't know how many other times I got to say, we've scheduled it, we've test run it, and it's not an anticipated problem.
Well, we didn't test. Are we going to test run 18? Are we going to have that test run? Or are we going to wait till the first day of school when the kids all come to Oak Tree and they're all sitting there and then they take them out one by one? Kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. If you've ever been there on the first day of school for the first 2 weeks doesn't start until 9:20, 9:25, sometimes 9:30. And then they're going to have to sit there and go through that whole process of unloading by grade and then go across the street. It doesn't make sense to keep kids on the bus that long. And then we're going to have the kindergarten kids in the afternoon have to sit across the street at Applegarth and wait for those students to dismiss and all load the bus and go home. You're keeping kids on the bus for way too long.
We're shaving 5 minutes off the current routes.
I find that hard to believe. And as far as the late busing, I know it was brought up at Buildings and Grounds the other night that we should be looking at other districts comparable to us, one being South Brunswick because they're just as big. And I think Mr. Tesler brought up the fact that, or found evidence that South Brunswick does, in fact, have late busing. So I just wanted to make note of that publicly to the entire board because I know several times it's been said that South Brunswick doesn't have late buses, but they in fact do. So when you're making your decision, you might want to think about what the other districts right next to us are doing too.
Thank you.
Arnaz Yousefzai, 7 Whitson Lane, and this adds on to Ms. Skirby's comments and the prior comments about comparing as we move forward. Now we've been defeated, the budget has been defeated by the state or the county. You said the county has the final say or the state has the final say?
Oh, no, after our
Yeah.
budget is approved and locked, it goes to the county and they
Okay.
need to approve it.
Okay, so as she just said about South Brunswick, I would like to know, out of curiosity, what other districts in Middlesex do not have courtesy busing or have removed it?
We had those statistics. I don't know if they're here tonight.
That's been asked and answered. We went over all.
No, you
those
didn't name the
statistics
districts today.
previously.
I'm asking tonight, right now, I'm asking for the first time. I didn't hear anybody else ask it, or I didn't hear the names of the other districts that do not have courtesy busing or have had it cut back.
You know, at the time that this discussion was relevant around the budget creation, all of that information was provided, and I'll be happy to
Where can I
get
get
out
it
of the
now?
files in the office and provide it to you. Just send me an email requesting, and I'll
Okay,
give you
I will
everything.
do that, because I think that's important to compare, and that's what a couple of the other parents brought up moving forward, that we could bring this back even if it's defeated now and we don't have busing.
I could tell you, if you have a snapshot now that South Brunswick offers some courtesy busing,
Okay.
which they may be requiring subscription for from parents,
Okay,
there is pressure for the discontinuance of that coming from the
Okay.
county, so I wouldn't even count on that.
okay, I haven't heard that. I have family and friends in South Brunswick, and they're very happy with their busing. So you can't, none of you can tell me off the top of your heads any districts in Middlesex that don't have courtesy busing right now or have cut it back? Nobody can remember from memory? Okay, thank you.
Michelle Arminio, 9 Nathaniel Street. I keep hearing about budgets, budget failures, how much the state doesn't give us, how much we don't get. I really feel compelled to constantly repeat myself about this. This board is responsible for more than 80% of a $100 million budget. To keep trying to pass the blame on, and I may agree with you that we should be getting more funds, and, you know, we deserve more and all of that stuff. But the point is, the people sitting here who are elected by the taxpayers of this town are responsible for over 80% of the working budget in Monroe, or approximately. Am I incorrect, Mr. Gorski? You can correct me.
I believe that ratio pertains to 80% of the budget is fixed cost, and the board's real interaction in the budget is limited to about 20.
The fixed cost has to do with negotiation with teachers and salaries and administrative salaries. And if it's only fixed costs because you rely on mediation or whatever, I mean, if you're not negotiating salary, I mean, you negotiate salaries every budget, is that not correct?
No.
Okay, so every 3 years? So every 3 years, this board is responsible for negotiating salaries. I think we are very generous with our salaries and benefits. I understand that, you know, some of the administrators have gotten raises. So I think the people need to keep that in mind. To literally pass the buck, the responsibility for the buck, to other parties is not fair. To pit the seniors against the people with children is not fair in this town. This is a community. We pay for things for everyone, and this board needs to be responsible for the amount of money they negotiate with professionals, they negotiate for themselves, and it's not this use of the money that I think anyone objects to. It's the waste of the money. There are places in the budget that things are paid for that there are maybe more important things. Now, it is the responsibility of all of us as citizens to take a look at these budgets and maybe not just come once a year. I definitely agree with that. But, and for all those people who only come on an irregular basis, everything that people have asked for information and data from is public record. Any person in this room can go to the Board of Education and ask for all these documents. They are entitled to them. They would get them right away. I encourage people to just be more informed. But please, don't pass the buck. You are responsible for the way the funds are spent in this community. The debt, so we have $10 million a year in interest, I believe, that we pay our debt off. Is it approximately 10 million?
The $10 million approximate number is for principal and interest in the debt service fund.
Right. So we have a $100 million operating budget. How?
95.
$95 million in an operating budget. So that means people are choosing how to use those funds. How much debt do we have? Actual principal debt? Over 100 million or over 200 million?
I'd have to refer to the CAFR long-term debt schedules to give you an exact number. I actually mailed you a CAFR when you asked that question
Right, and I don't
previously.
remember either. But it's quite a bit of money.
150 million.
150 million. So people really need to realize how much we really are spending in this community. So to spend it wisely is the responsibility of this board. And to say that the budgets are defeated on a $100 million budget, historically, in the last 5 defeated budgets, the township council on that kind of money they used to take only $500,000 off of the budget. So to say that somebody else is depriving our children because some people voted the budget down is ridiculous. I don't know, I'm not a mathematician, but $500,000 on a $100 million budget is it less than 0.5%?
And that's what gets it nasty.
Well, it's only cumulative because every year when you raise, so it's cumulative in the opposite, Mr. Leary. When you raise the budget 2% every year, and we know it's more than 2% because that cap doesn't apply to all financing, so it goes beyond 2%, and people don't, let me finish, please, I believe I have the floor. Okay, so it's cumulative on the opposite end, too. Every time you raise a $100 million budget 2%, what does that make it, $102 million? And the next year, when you raise it another 2%, so it's a exponential increase. So when it comes down cumulatively, the exponential increase is higher. So let's be real clear and not have the rhetoric about budgets that have failed, because it's not been that much. The council has not taken, I think only in the last year with a lot of public pressure did the council take, for the first time, over $1 million off of the budget. And I know that there's a lot of calculation prior to, because the public is not privy to what gets taken off, that you guys have, the council and the Board of Education has private meetings, so you already know what you're going to take off and what you're not. So let's be clear and succinct with the public and not make them feel that one party or the other is really responsible for this. We are all responsible in total, and it's how you spend the money that counts. And the children, not sometimes the salaries, are the ones. It's supposed to be all about the children. Well, sometimes it doesn't seem that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I make a brief statement?
Yes, Mr.
When we talk about budgets, what you have to look at.
Use your mic, Mr. Leary. We all want to hear what you have to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. There are a couple of factors. We are a rapidly growing community. Even under these horrible economic conditions, we're adding 200-plus students to our, and in the case of our high school, we're adding well over 100 students.
I agree with you. I think the parents should go to township council meetings and planning board and zoning board meetings as well.
And the other thing is, of course, the economics. I mean, in the early 2000s, we were facing significant increases year over year, particularly for building and other things like that. Now everything's in the in the dumper. But as we look forward, we could be facing increasing economic increases, cost of living increase, cost of production. So 2% is beggarly, to say the least.
Well, it's more than 2%, sir. If Mr. Gorski can attest, that 2% cap is not on all of the funding. There's funding outside of the 2% cap that gets raised a lot higher. So people don't realize that until after they get their tax bills.
Thank you.
Cayman Islands.
Sorry, Chrissy Skirby again, 8 Seminole Court. This is on a different issue. Dr. Hamilton, you'll remember I attended the Buildings and Grounds meetings in June in which Dr. Lynch delivered the results of the water test of Applegarth School. Dr. Lynch reported that the water indeed did contain lead due to old pipes that run throughout the building. He said it was not a municipal water issue, but rather an issue with the building. Dr. Lynch's results showed that the first draws were in some cases 20 billion parts per million over the acceptable level. He said that Roto-Rooter came in and flushed the system, and after several attempts, they finally got clean samples. To quote him, he said his rule of thumb is to have the water run for at least 30 seconds each time it is turned on. He said the system needs constant flushing to ensure acceptable levels of lead. I was alarmed hearing this, as I don't know how you control students turning on the water and making it run for 30 seconds each time they take a drink or wash their hands. I've been in contact with the Middlesex County Freeholder's Office, who put me in touch with reps from the DEP and the EPA. I would like to read a quote from the lead rule the EPA sent me. Children are especially susceptible to lead exposure because their bodies absorb these metals at higher rates than the average adult. Exposure to high levels of lead can cause damage to the brain, red blood cells, and kidneys. Exposure to even low levels of lead can cause low IQ, hearing impairment, reduced attention span, and poor classroom performance. Pregnant women and their fetuses are especially vulnerable to lead exposure since it can significantly harm the fetus, causing low birth weight and slowing normal mental and physical development. Dave from the health department was at Applegarth last Wednesday, July 18th, and he met with Jerry Tague. He said Jerry walked him through Dr. Lynch's results and that Jerry had spoken to the board about some options for mitigating this situation. I followed up with Dave on Monday at 3:30, and he said he had spoken again to Jerry and that on the tour of Applegarth School, he would talk to the board again about possible options. Since I was not allowed on the tour and it was not discussed at the Buildings and Grounds meeting, I wanted to know what options the board is currently planning to follow.
We didn't, from what I'm the chair of the Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation. We didn't discuss any options with regards to that.
First of all, with the water results that were communicated to the public previously, and I don't have them handy, the lead in the water standard, even applied to residential guidelines, was far below any issues where it would ever be a concern. They were perfectly safe. So there is no need for any kind of lead in the water remediation plan.
No, the first draw of the water at Applegarth did not show that. It was after Roto-Rooter came in and flushed the system. Dr. Lynch said that evening at the Buildings and Grounds meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chiarella, he said the system needs constant flushing. And that every time the water is turned on, it should be left to run for 30 seconds. Is that not what was reported in June?
At the start of the, from what I recollect, the start of the day, right?
My recollection of that, it was in reference to the building not being occupied and in use.
And he said, going forward, it needs constant flushing because the pipes are old. And the gentleman from the health department said that he would like to see 2 more samples of first draw water simulating a long weekend, 4 to 5 days. And he said he spoke to Jerry about that, and he was supposed to recommend that to the board. Has that happened?
That has not happened yet, no. And I'm not familiar with this conversation you reference.
Well, that's surprising, because the gentleman from the DEP knew about the tour.
I did not speak to this gentleman, so I don't know why that would be surprising to you. And I am not aware of the exchange that may have happened between Mr. Tague and this gentleman that you're referring to.
Well, we had the health department into Applegarth looking into lead.
That I
He
did
made some
know.
recommendations, but it's never been brought to the board.
What I want to be clear what I'm saying. I am saying that I can't confirm that the way you're recanting this conversation is accurate. So I don't want to give the impression that I am confirming what you are now reporting as a summation of that conversation, because I don't know that to be true.
Well, maybe could we set up a meeting with you, me, Jerry, and Dave from the health department?
I can speak to that because I did speak to Jerry after he met with the representatives from the health department and the township per your request to come check the water. And according to Jerry Tague, he immediately furnished all of these officials with results from the water testing, all of the testing, including the first test, which you referred to, which tested the water shortly after the water was turned back on after the building sat for a year.
The water hasn't been turned on since the building was closed?
So what the gentleman informed Jerry of after looking at the results was, quote, "What's the problem here? These results are so far below any health concern, even for a residential property, that there's no issue." And he took the reports, and there was no corrective action plan reported to us from this gentleman. There was no need for any address. He left satisfied with the reports. And if you were the one who invited the gentleman, you should perhaps ask him and speak to him yourself.
I will, because he told me that one of the recommendations that the board made to Jerry was to maybe turn off all the drinking fountains.
There was never a need for a recommendation because the water levels with lead are
No, they weren't. And Dr. Lynch recommended, again, constant flushing because when the water sits for more than 6 hours in the pipes, it gets recontaminated again. That's exactly what the woman from the EPA told me and from the gentleman from the DEP that was here.
It's a general comment that could be applied to residential pipes and faucets
I know, but
also.
Dr. Lynch made the recommendation at the Buildings and Grounds to have the water run as a rule of thumb, he said, 30 seconds every time it is turned on. And I know Mr. Chiarella was asking questions that night about what constant flushing meant.
Right.
So have we looked into, do we have a plan for that constant flushing?
I think that's something that we should probably at least discuss at the next Buildings and Grounds meeting, just to see what, with regards to flushing and at least speak to Jerry about some of these points.
I mean, time and time again, we say, Dr. Lynch is the expert. Well, the expert was there, and the expert said it needs constant flushing, and that as a rule of thumb, every time it's turned on, it should run for 30 seconds. That's what our expert that you pay told us.
I respectfully think you're misquoting him, and we should refer to Dr. Lynch and get guidance from him on this
Well, maybe
matter.
the Buildings and Grounds Committee remembers better. That's what I heard that
Dr. Lynch
evening.
never expected us to be continuously flushing
Yes,
the
he
water
did.
before every use. That's false.
No, that is exactly what he
Because the
said.
testing results are so immaterial with the content of lead, it's not needed. There is no
That was
remediation.
after Roto-Rooter came in for 3 days and continuously flushed the system.
Roto-Rooter was there because we had a clog in the outgoing pipe.
That's not what was talked about at Buildings and Grounds that evening. No. Will we look into that, Mr. Chiarella, from Buildings and Grounds? Will your
Yes.
committee look into that? Thank you.
Liz Brewster, 29 Spruce Meadows Drive. Ken had an excellent vote on the floor, if we can get back to it. I think it would be a great solution. I think everybody would be very happy in this town for what you propose. However, if I'm hearing that that's going to be a problem financially, the safe house, although not perfect, I really think we should try it because we owe it morally and legally somewhat to our children to give it a try to see if it'll work. It'll be a nominal amount of money, and hopefully that will do the trick. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I think either way we vote, I would like to keep an eye on the enrollment numbers, just to see how this impacts the busing and overall. Do we have nobody attending band from now on, or music at the
absolutely.
elementary level? I just don't want to just write them off.
Absolutely.
And also, that the idea to maybe move it into the afternoon might not compromise.
You have that on the end. Your radar.
Bob has counter arguments on why it shouldn't be after school.
Oh, really?
Conflicts.
Jennifer Hijack, 12 Sycamore Court. First of all, I want to thank some members of the Board of Education for finally entertaining some options for us working parents. I have been here month after month since March. I know many other people didn't even know what was going on, and thank you finally for sending out the alert now to let people know. Obviously, they got the message and they came out tonight to show you that it's not just a handful of people it was going to affect. Obviously, it's room full. Thank you for offering us the safe house and/or the bus run. I think either of those options, as a working parent, I know I am very grateful for, and I'm sure that many of my friends and other parents who are in a similar situation as myself are thankful for. So when you make your vote, please consider our needs and know that we thank you deeply for trying to help us. Thank you.
If I can, Mr. Chiarella, Dr. Gorman just brought something to my attention that I want to go on record on in reference to your reply in terms of your question regarding moving band to the afternoon. Historically, there has been a huge problem for youngsters because when band and music is added at the end of the day, it conflicts with the sports programs. So children often are forced into a situation where they have to choose between one or the other. So,
About just at the elementary level.
and tag.
Elementary doesn't have sports programs.
They got tag and basic.
Tag and basic skills. Yeah.
Lunchtime.
Well, we've always tried to do that at some times.
Okay. Thank you.
Liz Brewster, 29 Spruce Meadows Drive. I have a comment about the music program. Moving it at the grade level, I think they were suggesting there's no sports after school because the start times at Brookside and Oak Tree are later. I don't think it's going to be as much of a problem at Woodland because I believe they start at like 7:40. I don't know if anybody could back that. And the program at the middle school starts at 7:30, which seems early enough for parents to get there. So I guess the concern would be potentially Oak Tree and Brookside because they start about 8:10, 8:05. No, the band.
8:55.
8:20.
8:55.
No, for the band. We're talking zero period busing, so maybe if you see a diminish in the future, maybe the grade schools, the 4th and 5th grade band, there's no conflict in sports or anything. If
No,
you
but
did
there
that.
would be a conflict with tag and basic skills.
Oh, well.
You just
Oh, well, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to close out the public forum. I'm going to withdraw my motion so that, and I don't want to start a riot, but Mr. Gorski is going to read into the record a new motion. Thank you.
It is recommended to the members of the Monroe Township Board of Education that a 4:30 late bus transportation services be reinstated at the Monroe Township High School and Monroe Township Middle School, and whereas a supervision center will be established at the Monroe Township High School until 6:15 p.m., and that Mr. Gorski is directed and authorized to perform a budget review for the 2012-2013 current year budget and report the transfer of available funds and the source accounts to the board by the meeting of August 20th, 2012.
Second.
First by Ken Chiarella, second by Ira Tesler. Any comments?
Comments, Patrice? Oh, Patrice, I'm sorry. I mean, Ms. Ferroni.
Is this a recommendation that Dr. Hamilton and Mr. Gorski are supporting?
I could support that, yes. I can support that, yes.
Question, what do we do if the financial analysis comes back and says you can't do it? I would just want to make sure if I vote yes, it's contingent upon the ability to afford to be able to do it.
I appreciate your concern. $35,000, as reported tonight, was saved by the insurance change. So the number that we're talking about here is about $80,000 approximately to fill the rest of this obligation. It'll have to be presented to the Finance Committee, some potential source recommendations for the funds, some eliminations from the budget in order to accommodate this.
So I want to be clear that everybody understands that if you vote yes to this, other things will go. I recommend that we don't vote on this until we know what those other things are. Because otherwise, we could be borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. And I don't know what I'm giving up if I say yes to bringing back the 430. I think we need to know what the impact is.
I think the other thing, too, for the board to consider is next month we could have all of our band parents here because we have not reinstated zero period busting. So there could be a whole nother group here next month.
I'm going to agree with Mr. Kaufman because I can't vote on something and then you're coming back to us saying, gee, now we got to cut this, there could be a program. Until I know where the money is coming from, I could never support this. But I would support the safe haven because I think that money we could come up with.
To that comment, the money for the safety program, which, just for full clarification, would be an establishment of a staff supervision area in the Monroe Township High School until 6:15 p.m. and a staff supervision area in the Monroe Township Middle School till 5:15 p.m. We estimated the cost for that to be approximately $25,000, and that could be transferred from the insurance account on the savings that I mentioned earlier.
Why don't we split the motion?
That's what I was just going to say.
Well, why don't we just do one and then the other?
I think you have a motion.
We table this and wait for the Finance Committee deliberations, and then we can look at what's the puts and what's the takes.
Well, here's the thing. Rules are right. You have a motion. We're gonna have to vote on it. We're gonna have to say no. If anybody wants to make another motion that says maybe we can have the safe haven, then we can vote on that, and maybe another motion that says go back and figure out where the 100K is coming back from, perhaps.
Well, the problem too is that the next board meeting's not until August 22nd, and I think the parents really want to know what's going on either way.
Could we have a special meeting just to address this and in early August and get it off the monkey off people's backs?
I'd like to say this is a very slippery slope, because the next meeting, you're going to get another group, and you're going to flip again. And you just can't do that month after month after month. And we do it year after year after year. And it's certainly not popular, and it's not comfortable voting against a group of parents when they come in here. But you know what the big picture is, and sometimes you just got to stand up for it.
If there's no other comments, we'll have a roll call
Yes.
on the resolution, or the motion that's on the floor to reinstate a 4:30 run and have a safe supervision area at the Monroe Township High School till 6:15. Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Mr. Klein?
No.
Mr. Leary?
Reluctantly, no.
Mr. Masters? Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Yes.
Ms. Antelis?
No.
Mr. Braverman?
No.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Acting Board President, motion does not pass.
Thank you.
I want to make a motion to everything about the safe haven. Remove the busing.
It is recommended to the members of the Monroe Township Board of Education that a supervision center be provided at the Monroe Township High School, expanding the period from 4:15 to 6:15, and a supervision center be established at the Monroe Township Middle School until 5:15, and authorize Mr. Gorski as directed to transfer money from the insurance account in lieu of the savings from the change of carrier, and report such to the board by August 22nd, 2012.
Second.
Question. Just what's the total cost on that?
Approximately $25,000.
Thank you. And if we implement the bus run subsequently, that'll actually go down, right? To about 15, 18?
15, approximately, that's correct.
Need the middle, I'm just trying to clarify.
Correct. The 4:30 late run, if it came later, would alleviate the need for the supervision center at the middle school.
So you got a motion and a second.
Take the vote.
Lou Masters made the motion.
Amy second.
Amy seconded.
Okay. Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Yes.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
No.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Acting Board President, motion passes.
Thank you. I'd like to make another motion to direct Mr. Gorski to find out where the money potentially could come for the 4:30 bus run and report back to us at the next Board of Education meeting or next Finance Committee meeting.
So that's a feasibility study to
Feasibility,
find
exactly.
$80,000 for potential 4:30 reinstatement.
Right.
Ira made the motion.
Second.
Lou Kaufman, second.
Comment?
80 after the insurance.
Comment?
Yes.
Perhaps this board should do a feasibility study on looking at the before and after school program, because from the profits that Basker is making, which includes another $150,000, maybe that's something that could bring that busing back. I'm sorry, I was just making a comment, but we can do that.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on something, and thank you, Amy, for reminding me, because I totally forgot. When the Basque folks came in and we were talking about what they're going to be doing for the district, I know we spoke about earlier openings and later closings in the afternoon to kind of span out, because that was a concern of the parents. After we had those meetings, I know that there were going to be other follow-ups held by the administration. Does anybody have an update for me on where we are with that? And I know what was also brought up was the question of being open when the schools aren't. So I don't know if anything, B&G didn't hear anything after that, so I don't know if we had any follow-up.
We're in the middle of a motion.
I can say that, you know, the start times of the school have been established, have the support from the principals. And I did make an assurance that I recollect you bringing up now, that I will monitor the BASC program and act as a liaison with BASC to find out if there's any difficulties and survey the parents to make sure that BASC is serving the community effectively. Is that your recollection?
Yeah, I know that there was supposed to be some kind of follow-up, but I can't remember what it was going to be, because there were really three concerns that I remember. One was opening earlier, the second was staying open later, and the third was being available to the parents when the schools are closed. That's what came up in the meeting, so.
Yeah, and that was Amy's, that was
right?
Ms. Santel's point.
Yeah, okay. All right. I think
Which is why we should look at taking this program over.
Yeah, can we finish the motion on the table?
Yeah.
Yes. It was seconded.
Okay, so we have a first by Lou Masters and a second by, Ira Tesler, big one. Ira Tesler. Lou Kaufman, okay.
Yeah, this is the analysis.
Could you repeat the motion, please?
Yes.
The motion is recommended to the members of the Monroe Township Board of Education that Mr. Gorski conduct a feasibility study and budget review to determine if available funds exist to the tune of approximately $85,000 to initiate a 4:30 late run service at the Monroe Township Middle School, Monroe Township High School, and report back such by the August 22nd meeting.
Yeah, I'd just like to amend the motion instead of the next meeting to as soon as possible.
I think this is something that should just be looked at for next year. I think to scramble and start grabbing things, we didn't budget the money, to start scrambling and, oh, we can take it from here, take it from there. We don't know what the long-term impact is. We've made a decision about the safe haven, and we should just stick with it. Do a feasibility study, perhaps January, about taking over the after-school program, and perhaps from that profit, we can then reinstate our busing. But I think to start scrambling around now to find out where this money's coming from, we're not going to have this answer till the August 22nd. It's going to be too late. What, are we going to make a phone call to parents and say, oops, we changed our mind again? We're just causing more confusion than anything, so I'm not going to support that.
Motion and a second. Any other comments? Roll call. Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
I haven't got the foggiest idea.
Just a yes or no.
Again, this is for a feasibility study to determine if budget funds are available in an approximate amount of $85,000 to bring back the 4:30 late runs, and to be furnished to the board as soon as possible.
Give it a yes.
Yeah, because he doesn't have enough work to do right now, so.
Are you going to get it? You're going to get the information before the last meeting that we can find out like the second week of August?
I hope to have it within a week. There's a lot of budget accounts that have to have encumbrances adjusted, but I'm confident that I can.
And this is just a study. Hey, can I go back to high school?
You're in high school.
Yes. Yes.
Yes? So noted.
My arm.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
What was that I didn't hear?
Ms. Antelis?
No.
Mr. Braverman? Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Acting Board President, motion passes, and I will conduct said feasibility study and report the results as soon as possible.
Mr. President?
I make a motion to close the meeting?
Oh, no, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to have a special meeting to hear these findings. On August 13th, that gives you a little over a week, a little bit, time to get your stats together. For August 13th, it's a Monday. Because otherwise, we need to know as quick as possible.
Do we need a public meeting for that, or could he?
You have to have a motion and a second, and, because you need a thing, right? To have a special meeting? Yeah, have approval by the board.
Oh, you mean to approve, to see it and approve it?
To have a special, yeah, because he's got to do we got to make the decision, we can't wait till the 22nd.
I misunderstood. I thought you were just asking for a special meeting to hear about it.
No, to act on it.
I second it.
Anybody want to buy a house in Regency?
So would you mind please repeating?
Sure, not a problem. I move to have a special meeting to hear the findings and to vote on this particular matter on Monday, August 13th at 7 p.m. at the high school.
Thank you.
Why can't it be done in a finance meeting?
Will be.
Then somebody has to
I
make
don't know why we have to have a special
schedule
meeting when we have a
meeting.
finance committee that can really discuss it.
Doesn't have
It's
to be
open to the
public?
public. Finance is open to the public.
Is finance open to the public?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
You don't need the board to create a committee meeting, but you need the board to create the special meeting, so,
That's why I second it.
right. Okay, I'm with you.
It's a public meeting.
I didn't say we were going to vote.
Roll call has been called for. Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
I just want to make a motion.
Mr. Tesler?
Did we say what time?
7
did.
p.m.
We did 7 p.m.,
I
yes.
did, actually.
I got motion sickness right now, so yes.
Mrs. Ferroni? Ms. Antelis?
No.
Mr. Braverman? Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Are we still here?
Mr. Acting Board President, motion passes to create a special board meeting Friday, August 13th, 2012.
Monday, August.
Monday, beg your pardon, Monday, August 13th, 2012, 7 p.m. at the Monroe Township High School for the purpose of reviewing feasibility study.
The next scheduled public Board of Ed meeting is August 13th, it says right.
I make a motion to close the meeting?
I have a second?
Second, all in favor, aye. Opposed, nay.
Next building?
Second.
Thank you again for your support.
Second motion, all in favor?
I miss Carlton James. Did we actually close this meeting?